welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist, and with me as always...
Caffeine Rage.
Yep,
You gave up on the added intro this time around.
Well, I was trying to come up with a Mr. T joke. Maybe I'll cut those two bits together. Whatever. How you doing?
Am I supposed to say I pity the fool now?
Hey, there you go. Pity the fool. I asked how you were doing, but I gotta read the topic list. On today's show, we'll of course be talking about the games that we played this past week. The Mortal Kombat XL Dilemma. Yandere Simulator has been banned from Twitch. There's a million interesting Nintendo NX rumors. We're finally having our 30 versus 60 FPS debate, or discussion. And we have several letters for this week. One of them audio. Now, Rage, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, even though my cheeks already hurt from laughing.
Yeah.
Too many failed intros.
Well, that wasn't too bad. We only had one actual failed intro, and I made a couple of mistakes. But, you know, this just shows how professional we are. We just roll with it. Maybe.
It's all the experience you've gained from Kerbalcast.
Yeah, that about lines up with how well this show's produced, so... So, what games have you played this week, sir?
Well, beyond the usual, Warframe and a little bit of Binding of Isaac, I've played... I actually got back to Civilization 5, my game on that. Which, if you don't remember from 2 weeks ago, I was doing a pretty standard game on an archipelago map. But I have two warmongers and one that loves to go for democracy or democratic victory, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
That being Rome, Japan. I have the Ottoman Empire, which is a potential warmonger as well, and then I have the Swedes.
Swedish, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just now getting into the modern era in my game. I wasn't nearly as far along as I thought I was, partly because of the slowdown, because of all the added stuff from Brave New World and Gods and Kings.
Right.
And I had to deal with the Ottomans a bit because, as you may remember 2 weeks ago, they were sending a lot of missionaries over into my little island chain.
Yep, I remember you telling me about that.
Well, I finally eradicated all the impure thoughts that were taking place in my kingdom.
When you say eradicated, does that mean that you killed all the missionaries and...
Actually, you can't kill the missionaries. It's very tough to do so.
Well, that's stupid. I want to go kill missionaries.
I think you could do it if you're at war, but the thing is that this ties into my problem with my game right now, is that I'm having a severe resource problem. If you don't know, as you progress through the ages, new resources unlock, and various units require additional resources. One of the first ones being iron and horses. Well, it's actually horses, iron, then coal, aluminum, and then uranium. And oil as well, somewhere in the mix there towards the end. Well, as it turns out, I must have the 4 islands on this map that has limited coal, no iron. I have horses, which I'm well beyond that era now, so they're basically glue at this point. What?
That's just funny to hear you say.
I thought you were going to say that was wrong.
No. Just funny.
I have no aluminum at all, or aluminium, depending on your pronunciation of it, because I am playing the English Empire. And it's proving to be
quick
very
aside,
difficult.
I do prefer the word aluminium. I love like the way that British people say things.
Yeah, and there's actually a town not too far away from me, but it's in the state. That if you read the on the map, it's Hurricane. Or, sorry. Yeah, it's Hurricane, but everyone always pronounce it Hurricane. The English pronunciation.
Interesting.
It's just the remnant from colonial days.
The more you know.
And knowing is half the battle.
All right, carry on.
But yeah, I'm having a real problem with resources in general, so I haven't been able to go deal with the Ottomans, even though I've gotten them to the point where they're a little afraid of me because I have a slight tech advantage. I'm somewhere around half an age ahead of everyone else. Partly because I ended up getting a couple cities that were doing really well in science, and I've focused on that and trying to get a science victory. But then I discovered I don't have the resources to do the science victory because I don't have the aluminum or aluminium. So now I'm trying to do a democratic victory where I'm taking over the World Council. And my first step in that is getting my religion made the world religion, which I was successfully able to do, which gives me extra delegates. I'm now sitting at something like 8 while everyone has about 4 or maybe 5. And if I could get some city-states on my side, which shouldn't be too hard, I think I might be able to get a democratic victory. I'm still going to work towards the science victory. If I could get a couple like satellite cities out and secure the resources for it. But it's proving to be very, very difficult. But that's the fun of Civ, is discovering that after 6 hours of gameplay, all the strategy that you had, oh, well, that's not going to work unless you go to war and get really lucky. Right?
Yeah, I think I've said this on here before, but science victories are by far my favorite way to win in Civ. And I will drag a game out just to get a science victory when I could more easily win with a military victory or a cultural victory or whatever, you know?
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of military action in my game. There's been a bit of a scuffle between Japan and Rome because they share a border on this one island and they're fighting it out there. And they're also squabbling over this one city-state, and I have no idea why they're doing it, because it's like a religious city-state, so it doesn't give them resources or anything, and it has absolutely no luxuries or anything. They're just squabbling over it.
It's a matter of principle now. No, it's mine. No, it's mine.
I'm about to just step in and say, okay, each of you grab the city-state by an arm and pull, and whichever one ends up with the most of it wins. And then I go conquer them.
There you go.
I actually don't have a lot of military, partly because it's archipelago and the AI doesn't do a water warfare all that well, which is a little disappointing. Just because there's so many civs that have interesting abilities with water. For example, the English have an extra movement point with their ships. It's just kind of saddening to me. I do know that there's mods out there to improve the AI, but it also disables all the achievements, and what's the fun in that, right?
Well, I mean, I would be okay with not having achievements if I had a better game
Well, I'm
experience.
trying to get the first win with the English Empire, or with, I shouldn't call it the Empire, even though I am calling myself the Empire, because I have like twice as many cities as everyone else.
Right.
I tend to play this weird combination of tall versus wide, meaning that I have a lot of cities, but they're fairly well populated as well.
Yep. I do the same thing.
Yeah, the wide strategy for Civ is typically just spam as many cities as you can to keep as long as you have the happiness for it.
Yeah,
but keep them very low
ignore the
population, so you
happiness.
can just spread out as far as you can and just have as much area of the map covered. Which does have its merits depending on the map and what resources you get.
Yeah. Although it's very important that you actually pay attention to your happiness, because that's a big problem for me in almost every game I play. I run out of happiness.
I'm actually like still 5 or 6 in the positive. Oh, and I did send out a tweet on showing one of my cities that I had it so perfectly balanced that it was, 11,000 turns till the next citizen would be born?
Yeah, it was a long time.
I mean, just absolutely perfectly balanced. And I was getting something like 600 science a turn, so I definitely have the science victory wrapped up if I could get the resources and just hold out long enough.
Right.
Which I think, if I recall correctly, I'm researching to have uranium displayed on the map, then I'm pretty much making a beeline for the Apollo program.
Yeah. And getting some nukes. It's always good to have a few of those lying around.
Yeah, and I'm probably going to have to throw in a military tech here or there. I'm still a bit ahead on military, but my science obviously is focused on just trying to advance the ages as far as I can. But that's pretty much Civ for now. I still probably have a good 2 or 3 nights to play and I haven't played it as much as I probably should, just because I've been suffering from a bit of insomnia, and Civ just makes it even worse.
Just one more turn.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta hurry up and get through that so we can play Sword of the Stars together.
Well, I need to learn Sword of the Stars. Sword of the Stars first.
Fair enough.
But I have played another game this week that doesn't take nearly as much time, but it's interesting. And we actually played this a bit together as well.
Okay, yeah, I was saying, is this going to be our...
Yeah, this is going to be Card Hunters. Is this one that was on your list as well?
Yeah, I was going to talk about it, so...
Well, I played a bit more than you, but go ahead and talk about it, and I'll chime in.
Well, Card Hunters is one of the most interesting games that I've seen in a while. It looks... What it is a turn-based combat RPG, which...
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. It has sort of an XCOM feel to it, just in the combat.
That's what I was going to say.
Especially with cover from magical spells and the fact that you can flank opponents.
Right. And, you know, I was going to say, there's been games like XCOM, and there's plenty of games out there that do that. And, I mean, there's plenty of games that do kind of the medieval feeling turn-based combat thing. But the two things that set this apart is, first, the art style. It actually looks like you're playing a board game of sorts.
A tabletop game.
Yeah, a tabletop game. And all of the pieces look like little cardboard cutout pieces that you get from...
Yeah, there was a particular game that I was trying to think of that it looks like, and I forgot to look it up. So keep talking.
Okay. And then the other part that makes it so interesting is that it's free to play. Because I feel like the amount of quality that has gone into putting this game together is a bit higher than your kind of average free-to-play game that you would think of. I mean, there's a few games that do that for sure, like Warframe and this game, Hearthstone. But I mean, it's really got the type of quality that goes up there. I can't quite say how fair its currency systems and how grindy it is, because we've only played it for... Well, I played it.
I played it a bit longer than you, and I could probably give you an idea. Eventually, you start getting the premium currency, which they call pizza slices, because it is D&D.
Yep.
And there are several games that I was thinking of that, like Super Dungeon Crawler, that just the same art style, or it's basically the tabletop dungeon crawler with pieces of board that you put together.
Yep.
So it's basically an amalgam of all of those, art style-wise.
I immediately thought of Munchkin.
Yeah, Munchkin is a good example of it, just because of the the deck building premise that we'll get to in a bit. But right. The paid model on it's interesting. Eventually, you get some free currency, which you could spend on a few things. You could spend it on cosmetic little figures to change the look of your various characters. On single player, you get 3 characters, and on co-op, you get 1 character each. So you really want a party of 3. You can play it with a party of 2, and the balancing element is that if you have 2 players, they each get an extra card. So it's kind of a weird balance there. You probably want that 3rd player just because you have access to all 3 classes then. Yeah, which is a wizard, a cleric, and a warrior.
And when we played together, we didn't have a cleric, and so I was the warrior, and I died almost every match that we played.
Yeah, and I ended up kiting things around and shooting it at a range.
Right. Part of that problem, though, is probably because I picked the elves. I built an entire team of elves just for fun, and they have the highest amount of movement, but they're the weakest in terms of health.
Yeah, elfish warriors are, well, a joke.
Yeah, I'm probably going to swap out to a dwarf.
Yeah, there's probably a good build with them, but it's probably not something that you want to start off immediately with. You can go back to the tavern and buy additional characters for gold, which is the currency that you get in-game for just playing. But the paid model, we'll get back to that. You get pizza slices. You get some for free by visiting different areas. Like, there's a chest shop that you eventually open up that... think of it as basically the TF2 style of chest, or crate or briefcase or whatever the hell they're calling it now, where you open it up and you get, well, in this case, a few items of varying quality. And there's different styles of chests. There's one that has the free currency on it. But then there's two that have the paid currency. So it can become a little bit pay to win if you're willing to just put so much money into it. It's basically like buying booster packs in Hearthstone or another online card game, but Hearthstone's the most popular right now, so that's the one I'm thinking of.
Right.
And also, well, there's one other thing that you didn't get to that has a paid currency attached to it.
Okay.
There's also paid dungeons. You have to pay the pizza slices to be able to enter, and the first time you complete that, you also get an epic item, which are pretty powerful.
Sounds interesting.
And you get enough pizza slices to unlock a couple if you don't use them on anything else. And I'm not sure how it works on co-op. If, like, let's say my account unlocked one dungeon, if I'm allowed to basically bring you in, or both of us have to unlock it. And there's also an option to basically buy all the dungeons at a lower price. But unfortunately, you don't get enough free pizza for that because, why would they do that?
Right. Actually, that kind of sucks that they're locking away content like that behind a paid currency.
Yeah, I will say that I've played... actually, I probably need to look on that. I've played 6 hours in total, so according to Steam. Which I think probably about 2 was with you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about 2 hours.
That seems like about a fair assessment. Okay, so about 2 hours with you. So that puts 4 hours on the account that I have progressed further. And I've unlocked probably about 5 dungeons that are locked away behind pizza slices, which sounds weird. But there's probably about 15 that I could go to in total that are completely unlocked. So it is chunks of content locked away. And they do give you enough free currency to unlock a few of them. Which it's probably better to hold on to that for later dungeons if there's more locked away, which I assume there is.
Probably. Although I spent my free currency on one of the chests and got 3 rare to epic level items.
Well, you want to hear the frustrating thing?
Sure.
I unlocked another chest shop.
Huh,
there's a second one that's basically, they're treating it like the expansion pack idea where after you get to a certain point in the campaign, the expansion pack comes in and you could get chests for that and get different items with that, with different cards. Which brings us to the deck building system. Rather smoothly, I might add.
What a segue. So the deck building system... gotta call it out. So the deck building system is actually pretty interesting. Each item that you have is connected to a series of cards, and higher level or more rare gear gives you either more or better cards or both. And also, as you level up, you're given power gems on your character. You haven't unlocked this yet. Actually, I have a power gem, but...
Oh, you do?
The tutorial guide told me that I couldn't use it yet, so I don't know what I do with it.
Oh, no, you don't have it yet. You have an item with it.
Oh, okay.
As your character levels up to about 6 or 7, you gain your first power gem. And they're spent, they're not technically spent, they're just placed on pieces of stronger gear that you used, and they have augmented effects, usually just better cards. And also, some of these cards are just kind of almost passive that are played immediately when the turn starts.
Yeah, I've seen enemies use a couple of those, actually.
Yeah, my wizard on my private account has a card that if he gets it in his hand, it's immediately played, and it adds damage to all electrical spells.
Nice.
And it draws another card for him. But you have to really balance this out. You have to pay attention to the whole thing, your whole equipment as a whole. Your whole equipment as a whole. There's a lovely sentence. Your whole set of equipment. Because each piece may add the same type of card, which will flood your deck. If you add a lot of pieces that have movement cards, you could end up with a handful of movement cards and nothing else. You're always guaranteed to get one movement card. but then everything else is kind of random.
Yeah, I've actually had that problem with the elf in one of the games we were playing, because the elves get bonus movement cards as like their kind of race bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wasn't really thinking through very well, and I put a couple of pieces of gear that had more movement, because like, oh yeah, I can just maneuver them around the battlefield better. But then I had a turn where I had 3 movement cards and 1 attack card.
Yeah, which it actually has turned out to be the opposite with my Dwarven Warrior. Because dwarves, the downside to them is that they're slower, so they have less movement cards, and their movement cards are typically lower quality unless you have really good equipment on them. A run versus a dash, which is a real difference in the amount of movement that you get when playing that turn. Or playing that card, I should say.
Yeah. I think the humans are like in the middle.
Yeah, they're the balancing act. That's pretty much how it always is with fantasy games, is that humans are kind of like the neutral, plain vanilla. And then all the other characters are based around them. You know, the elves are more agile but more fragile. The dwarves are they're more stout but slower. You know, that sort of thing.
Agile and fragile. There's a tagline.
And hated by all dwarves.
Yeah.
Tree-hugging hippies.
I love elves, man. I always play elves.
Just wait till you play Dwarf Fortress. You'll learn to hate them. I'll teach you to hate elves.
Eventually, we will play Dwarf Fortress. That's so far been a running joke, or a running thing, is I need to play Dwarf Fortress. Maybe I'll never play
basically just waiting for the release to stabilize.
Maybe like whenever we get ready to end the podcast, the last episode can be us discussing me playing Dwarf Fortress.
Maybe by then Dwarf Fortress will be released. You do know how long they're planning on developing that game, right?
Long time.
Only a couple decades.
Long time. But yeah, it's a really fun game, and as long as the content continues to be interesting and it doesn't throw up any of those kind of dreaded grind/paywalls.
I will say that I had to replay a couple dungeons to try to level up a character, because the way they give you the characters is that you get the warrior, and then you go do a couple missions, then you get the wizard, then you do a couple more missions, and then at the very end of the tutorial you get the cleric. And because of that, the cleric is about a level and a half behind all your other characters. I mean, you get the wizard pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah, I think you do 2, and then you get the wizard, and then you do several more before you get the cleric.
Yeah, and I had to basically grind a dungeon or 2 just to try to level out the cleric a little bit, which was a little frustrating. And I will say that getting in-game gold, the free currency, is a little bit of a crapshoot. The way that you get it is that at the end of each campaign, which is usually 2 to 3 battles, well, no, it's actually that's when you get the experience. After every battle, you get loot, which could be equipment, which has cards attached to it that you could swap out, or you get treasure, which you could sell immediately for so much gold, which really depends on the quality of the treasure. I've had pieces of treasure that gave me 200 gold, just the epic quality.
And then pieces of treasure that gave you 10.
Yeah, usually it's, about 10 to maybe 25 gold. So trying to get enough gold to fill up a empty slot, if you don't get lucky and get an epic piece of treasure, is very frustrating.
Yeah. The equipment's really expensive too if you want any of the good stuff.
Yeah, but getting a treasure chest may actually be the way to go for the currency, just because it gives you a lot of stuff, but you're getting random stuff, so you're not filling out a particular slot.
It doesn't do much to restrict you equipment-wise either. At least as far as I can tell, you can equip anything, as long as it's for your class at any time. Because I've got several pieces of
the
level 9
restriction
gear.
Is the power gems.
Okay.
Which you only get as you level up. So right now, my private account each character can only equip one really high piece of gear.
That makes sense, actually, for balance anyways, even if this wasn't a free-to-play game.
And there is a PvP element, but I have really no interest in doing PvP.
Yeah, me neither. I only care about the co-op stuff.
Which does make me the PvP element does make me worry a little bit about the free-to-play element. Or sorry, not the free-to-play element, the pay-to-win element, just because you could basically have the problem that Hearthstone has where the people that spent $300, $400 and has all the cards will just annihilate someone that has a freebie account unless they get a bit lucky or they have the perfect draws. But overall, a person that has all the cards and knows how to play will win 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
Even though people claim otherwise, I've just found Hearthstone to be frustrating because of that.
Well, that's an excellent segue into a game I'm going to talk about this week, Hearthstone, which I play it pretty frequently, but I've had a really, really good week. I'm in rank 15.
Oh, wow.
Which puts me in the top 25% of Hearthstone players, which makes me pretty happy.
To be fair, I didn't know you were playing Hearthstone.
I play Hearthstone all the time. I launch Hearthstone through the...
Well, I didn't know you were going to talk about it, I should say.
Did I cut you off?
No.
Okay. But yeah, I just wanted to say I hit rank 15. But you saying that, I did some testing, actually, this last week. Because a problem I've been running into here lately is that the people who have completed the most recent expansion, the Guild of Explorers or whatever it is, there are some really stupid, overpowered cards in that set. Like, ridiculously overpowered. Some of them are kind of difficult to use, but if they pull it off, you can't win. There's one that turns your entire deck and your hand into legendary cards.
Oh, the Golden Monkey. I've heard about that. I haven't seen it played successfully, though, even on YouTube videos.
I've had it played on me successfully 3 or 4 times. And
is it just the standard legendaries, or is it like a special set?
No, they're all the standard legendaries, so you could kind of get screwed over on RNG if you've already burned through most of your cards before you get it. But if you've got, I don't know, 10, 15 cards left in your deck plus your hand, because it transforms all of them, odds are you're going to get several really powerful legendary cards. Any of the legendaries that are 5 cost or above are above the power curve in terms of their power, or their power cost ratio.
And several below that.
Several below that are too, but usually the ones that are below it still have got low enough health that you can deal with them pretty easily. But a lot of the cards that are 5 plus have got 10, 12, 14 health, and ridiculously good effects. And I was playing a guy who managed to draw the Golden Monkey on... how many cards did he have left? He had like 15 or 16 cards left in his deck, plus his hand. And I was like, well, I wonder how many turns it is before I get beaten. I lasted 3 more turns, and I had full health.
Wow.
It was awful.
Can you get multiple copies of it?
No.
Of Legendary?
Yes. Yes, you can.
That sounds rotten.
Yeah, it's nasty. There's several others that are really overpowered as well from that expansion. But now that the whole thing's out, a lot more people are completing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about power creep in Hearthstone now.
Yeah, there are several cards that are just literally better than cards that they have replaced. That are the same power cost and everything. Like, they'll be the same mana cost, but the new card will have more health or more attack or both, or a super beneficial effect. And it's like, well, why would I use this card anymore unless I just don't have the new one? And that's not very good. Making your old cards or your old content obsolete is a good way to ensure that new players have an even harder time getting into the game. I mean, there are some pretty good cards that are in the starting decks for characters, but not enough that unless you just get really lucky or happen to be a really good player, which if you're new, that's probably not going to be the case. You're just going to get destroyed.
Yeah, I really think Hearthstone's going to have a problem in about a year or so after they have a couple more adventures out and probably another expansion.
Yeah.
Of be able to retain new players.
I mean, I play regularly. I complete 5 or 6 weekly quests for all the bonus gold. I win plenty of games. I mean, I don't win all of my games, obviously, but I've got it probably a 75% win ratio.
Well, no wonder you're just rank 15.
I was going to say, actually, that makes perfect sense. But I sometimes struggle now. Like, I've got a lot of cards. I've got at least half the cards in the game, and I struggle sometimes to keep up with players who, spend a lot more money or are able to just play a lot more. Once you start hitting the ranked, probably 18, 17, where that most of the better players are that have got the majority of those cards.
And that aren't just playing the same 3 or 4 net decks.
Yeah. It's like, well, here we go. Let's see how lucky I can get. Which is a really crappy feeling because I'm pretty decent at Hearthstone. But it really sucks feeling like, well, am I going to get lucky this time? And usually that happens in the first few turns. Like when you see the first few cards they're playing. But, yep.
Do you think Hearthstone would have been better off if they had something like Smite does, where you pay a flat fee and you get all the cards? No messing around with boosters and all that?
That's tough. In terms of keeping players at as close to the same level as possible, I think that would be a good thing. There's so much content in that game, though, from a business standpoint, since they're not trying to do what Smite was doing to try and gather an audience.
Mm-hmm.
From a business standpoint, it wouldn't be worth Blizzard's effort to push that out there because there's, I don't know, how many cards are in the game? I'm going to guess roughly 400 or 500 cards. So from a business standpoint, what they're doing now is going to make them a lot more money. And I mean, Hearthstone is their biggest game at this point. They don't see a reason to try and incentivize people to spend money because they're like, well, we've got last time I saw 21 million accounts that play Hearthstone. I mean, even if they only monetize a few percent of 21 million, that's still hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of people. I mean, a 10% monetization rate would be 2.1 million users. That's more than a lot of MMOs have.
It's starting to get close to what WoW has.
Yeah. So, I mean, for players, absolutely, it would be great. But for Blizzard, it would be a dumb idea. And as cool of a company as Blizzard is, they still really care about their bottom line. So I don't see them doing that.
Blizzard games has always had a premium to them.
Right. And then the other game I played this week, obviously, EVE Online. So, honestly, the only reason I keep talking about it is because I keep having really good stories. So, last week we were at war. I said that on the podcast. Well, we won that war pretty quickly, actually. We had the war over by Saturday.
Wow.
And after you finish a war, you get if the other side surrenders to you, you have 24 hours of safety. And then someone can declare war on you again. Okay. So we were safe on Saturday. And then on Sunday, some people declared war on us. Different people this time.
Wow.
They have 12 people in their corporation, and they've all been playing since 2005. So we're like, well, we're screwed. And it's really starting to grind on a whole bunch of us because we don't want to be PvPers. We're in a mining corporation, an industrial corp.
Is there any way to opt out of war?
Nope. The closest you can do is to be based in high security space, which will protect you mostly from people who just are randomly trying to gank you, because security services will come and save you, and as long as you can survive 15 seconds, they'll come and save you. But if a corporation declares war on you, nobody comes to help you, no matter where you are. There's less war in high sec than low sec or null sec, but it sucks because we that's why we're in high security space, is so that we don't have to deal with fighting all the time, and we've been fighting wars for 3 weeks straight now. So a lot of us are getting tired of it and are petitioning to move the corporate headquarters to a more remote area of high security space.
Is it just they're wanting to take over your resources that your headquarters are at, or
No.
is it just random stuff?
It's just random. So you can get kills and medals and honor badges and stuff like that for killing players who you're at war with.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of it from the first guy that kept attacking us. He his corp was really new. I mean, it just had him in it and 2 people in it. And he was trying really hard to get some of those war medals. But we don't know why these guys are attacking us. They're a veteran PvP clan. They've won plenty of wars. So we don't know why they're doing it unless they're just trying to harass us
or friends of that other guy.
Yeah, or maybe friends of that other guy or something like that. But so we're petitioning to move the corporate headquarters to a more remote area of space because we're next to the biggest trading center in the game. Because that makes sense as an industrial corp. Less distance to have to move your stuff to sell it. But we think that's probably
causes a lot more attention to you.
Yeah, we're drawing a lot of attention to ourselves. So we are discussing moving, and I'm considering quitting if they don't move, because I just don't have fun with it. Like little bits of fun here and there, like it was nice to blow that guy up and do a fleet action twice, yeah. But just doing it all the time. Like we've had to run fleet actions fleet operations the last few nights to try and get these guys off of us, and they just we're way outgunned. We're in over our head. 6 of us attacked one of them who I guess was hunting us as well, and we couldn't kill her. And also, she killed me. And I don't even fly a combat ship. I fly a support ship. Although, that's a perfect reason for her to attack me. But, so, yeah, that sucks.
Well, sorry to hear that you're not having fun with it.
Well, I'm still having fun whenever I ignore everybody and go off and do my own thing.
Yeah, but then you have people hunting you now.
That's true. But so far, I haven't seen any of them in my sector of space, so I just keep a close eye on the local chat for war targets to show up. But I still have fun doing that. But now several of the corp people are getting upset because a lot of us are running and hiding, and they're like, we should face them, and it's like, we did, and they destroyed us, so why should we face them? We should just run away and hide. I'd even be okay if we just surrendered to them. I'd pay the surrender penalty and then move somewhere safer.
Mm-hmm.
But, so yep, that's the games I played this week.
Which brings us to our topics.
That is correct. I feel like this is the longest games we've played this week.
Yeah,
discussion.
really.
But
probably because we shared a game.
Probably. All right, so first on the list, Mortal Kombat XL and the new expansion that is kind of the standalone portion of the XL are not coming to PC.
Yeah, and this caused a lot of flack out there. Whew.
I think it's rightly deserved.
Yeah. I don't blame anyone for complaining, especially on the PC side, where NetherRealms kind of screwed over the PC players already. Or do you remember the whole problem that they had with the launch?
Yeah, it was something to do with the way that the game downloaded.
Yeah, there was this weird thing where it was a portion download where you download like the core game, and then while the game was active, it was downloading in the background, all that stuff. The idea was, if I recall correctly, I probably should have looked this up beforehand, it would have allowed you to play the game, bits and pieces of it while it fully downloaded, and was more meant for people that weren't downloading the entire thing very quickly to be able to enjoy the game, somewhat quickly. But the thing was that it broke.
Yeah.
I remember Total Biscuit having a video where he had access to the tutorial in like 2 characters.
Right. The new consoles do that. They'll download like enough of the game to start it working, and then you can play whatever's working while it downloads the rest in the background.
So it's probably a sign of a bad port, and they also had some real performance issues, if I recall correctly, as well. Another sign of a bad port. And it's published by Warner Brothers. Another sign of a bad port.
Honestly, that's the biggest sign of a bad port right there.
Well, no, the biggest sign is that the PC port wasn't done by NetherRealm. It was done by someone else, and I'm blanking on the name.
Yeah, I can't think of their name either.
Which I'll go look it up.
Yep. Port developer. Mortal Kombat PC port developer. High Voltage.
High voltage. Okay, yeah. I was thinking it was something electrical based, but I couldn't remember what it was.
But yeah, I don't. I've seen, this is one of those things that like people fight about over the internet incessantly. But honestly, I don't know why anyone would take WB's side on this. Like, I mean, that's just garbage.
The only side
really
that
shitty developing and publishing. It's like, yeah, we're gonna put out this really, loved franchise AAA game on PC, and then it's not even been a year since the game released. Oh, actually, we're not gonna develop for it anymore because it's too hard. Let's do consoles only.
And this is right on the heels of Arkham Knight. Basically, there's been some people talking that they're basically done with trying to fix it.
Yep.
And the last patch, it was basically like 1 or 2 fixes and then a bunch of stuff setting up for DLC.
I mean, that just goes to show how non-consumer friendly WB is. They would rather have their games be broken, but still monetized, as opposed to actually fixing their game where people can enjoy it.
Even their well-working games, they're very anti-consumer. Shadow of Mordor. In order to get a pre-release copy of that, you had to basically sign a NDA, which isn't out of the ordinary for most games. But the thing was that you couldn't talk about bugs. You couldn't talk about the game in a negative light. You could only praise the game. Praise Mordor. I
heard it referred to as a positive publicity contract.
Yeah,
basically,
that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, because basically the early reviewers / streamers or whatever that got the pre-release copies, like you said, they could only talk positively about the game. So, as part of the contract, WB was trying to control the message of the game.
Yeah, which overall the game turned out to be good, but it just left such a sour taste to the hype of the game.
Yeah, and it made it seem like it was going to be bad too. Shadow of Mordor is probably the only good game I can think of that they've released in the last several years. But that pre-release policy just made it seem like, well, they know that it's a bad game and they're trying to keep the bad stuff out of the press.
Yeah, I'm looking at a list of PC games from Warner Brothers, or list of Warner Brother inactive games. And I see Mortal Kombat X, Dying Light's on here.
Yep.
Which, if I recall correctly, did pretty well on PC.
It did all right. It was kind of a mediocre game.
Let's see, they have Gauntlet, which I honestly didn't play because this was before I really got to playing with the group. Right. So there was really no reason to get a multiplayer-focused game like that. And yeah, they don't have a lot on here. Injustice Gods Among Us.
That was an alright fighting game.
Yeah.
The thing that made it the best was that, if you're into the DC universe, that was pretty cool. But, I mean, it was just a pretty standard fighting game.
Yeah, and I'm already back to 2003 on this list, so they don't have a lot of games coming out in general, and just hurting their rep is just not helping them. The only argument I've heard that kind of makes sense is people talking about how the player base for Mortal Kombat X on PC is very low. But then you start thinking about this. Mortal Kombat X has had some severe netcode issues, which, might I add, and here's probably the most galling thing about this entire thing, is that the netcode issues are being addressed in the DLC and in the re-release, which isn't coming to PC, which would fix a lot of the problems for the PC version to begin with, and give them a player base.
Yeah. And still the player base for it actually isn't that small. On the most recent... shoot. I suddenly can't remember Total Biscuits podcast.
Co-optional?
Co-optional, there you go.
Co-optional.
But anyways, on the latest
I'm looking
co-op...
at Mortal Kombat X on the charts, on Steam charts.
Yeah.
And right now, as of 31 minutes ago, 390 players, with a 24-hour peak of 991. And it looks like it's pretty much stabilized at like every day hitting 1,000 players, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for you have to really remember one-on-one matches.
Yeah. So, but they were talking about that, and it's actually one of the top fighting games on Steam for a concurrent player base. Because really, fighting games are a very niche market for the people that actually want to play it online more than just occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, fighting games are a niche market overall. It's
Very
not
true.
just niche on PC.
And there's
Going back a bit further, it looks like they actually hit around 2,000 during the winter sale. And that's probably when people discovered, ooh, this has a bunch of netcode issues.
Right. And so, I mean, it might seem like a really small player base, but as far as this, how niche fighting games go, that's actually really good. And they've been putting up with these problems this whole time, and I'm sure they were looking forward to the DLC expansion, or maybe even just buying the game, the XL edition, because I think the XL edition comes with everything, even like the pre-release bonuses that are.
Yeah, it's basically like a Game of the Year edition, plus a few extra characters.
Right.
Which may be part of the reason for this, which I'll get to in a moment. But a lot of people are saying that, well, this just doesn't have the player base. Well, no, it has enough.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it sold enough copies to put it on parity with Mortal Kombat 9 in terms of like, it's on target for making the same sales numbers over about the same period of time as Mortal Kombat 9. And they were really happy with Mortal Kombat 9 sales, so I think that they're just making excuses.
Yeah, outside of the just having, it's only 500,000 copies on PC that's been sold, and that a lot of them are probably to dead accounts or players that aren't playing online, blah, blah, blah. The other thing I've heard is that it's possibly a licensing thing, which is possible because it comes along with Kombat Pack 2, which has Leatherface, the Xenomorph, Bo Ra Chow, and Tribong. Triborg, sorry. Tribong. That's in the Kombat Pack 3.
Well, how could that be a licensing issue, though?
I've heard a couple people just speculate that that they couldn't secure the deal for all three platforms, so they chose the consoles because it's easier to develop on. It's just complete rumors. There's been absolutely no response I've heard from anyone talking about why there's no PC port for this.
I'm trying to think, and like that just doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't.
So it's just pure rumor at this point, which is probably going to be the theme of this show.
Yeah, I don't know. That really kind of rubs me the wrong way, honestly. Like, if you've got the licensing deal to put it on the consoles with all the characters, that's much harder to license than it is on PC, because PC is such a more open market.
But it's also not without precedent. I mean, GTA San Andreas had a patch something like a year or so ago now that removed about a dozen songs from the playlist because the licensing had ran out on them.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I could kind of see that. Although music licensing is a lot more, at least from what I understand,
but it's also
a lot more difficult to work with.
Yeah, it's intellectual properties in general. Getting licensing to use certain characters in certain songs are just really weird.
Yeah.
So it could just be some sort of weird restriction on that.
Right. All right. I guess I could kind of buy that. I still don't think it's the case. I think they're just looking for excuses.
Until we get a definitive answer, which honestly, the way that they've been quiet on all social media that I've heard, I don't think we're going to get an answer. So it's just pure speculation.
Yeah, I think they're taking the
and those are the
hunker
two
down and let it blow over approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are the two big theories: is just the number of units sold, number of units sold / player base, and just licensing. And it's just disappointing and shows that you really can't trust buying a game and expecting to have support, especially from a WB product anymore.
Yeah, there's certainly developers that are worse for that than others, but I mean, in today's gaming environment where so many things are based online and based on so many different hardware specifications and all that other stuff, like a lot of developers are getting a bad rep, and for the most part, I agree with you. I don't think you can trust that a developer is going to support a game like both like they should or like they even say that they're going to. And that really sucks. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, they're all still big corporations. I think you should take everything they say with a grain of salt, even the best of them.
And also, it feels like the games media is turned into the cheerleaders for the corporations and not the consumers.
Yeah.
But then again, that's been kind of the way for years. I mean, just remember the whole Mass Effect and so many articles talking about the gamers are entitled. And just taking EA's side for Mass Effect, the ending to Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, I don't think that the gamers were acting entitled, but a lot of them were acting like babies over the situation.
No, I think the gamers are acting entitled because they're paying fucking customers.
Well,
they're absolutely entitled.
I don't mean that they weren't.
Like, I know. You're using the gaming media word of entitled, and I'm using the actual definition of entitled.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the outcry, just kind of my final thoughts on this, is the outcry definitely justified. I haven't seen anything where anyone was acting too much like a baby or anything. Kind of, what you just said, the games media version of entitled. But I really hope that there's some serious backlash that hits WB over this. They are one of the companies on my short list that really deserve it.
Oh, yeah. There needs to be some sort of, I want to call boycott, but that hasn't worked with gamers.
Yeah.
There's the famous picture of a Steam group talking about boycott. Was it Left 4 Dead 2? Or Call of Duty? It was Call of Duty. Because of lack of dedicated servers. And it shows like, I want to say 20 or 30 Steam accounts on it. And a good 2/3 of them, or to about 75%, are playing Call of Duty or whatever game they were boycotting. I can't remember if it was Call of Duty or Left 4 Dead 2, because there was a lot of outcry for Left 4 Dead 2 because it released so close to the first Left 4 Dead, which is very weird for a Valve game.
Yeah. Valve takes a long time to release games.
Yeah, they're the crock pot of game devs.
That is true, but things that you put in a crock pot almost always come out delicious. And
yeah, they put in a lot of ingredients, and they put it on low, and they let it simmer for 8 to 10 years.
But when it comes out, it's always good.
Good.
Moving on to something that's not so good, maybe. Depends on your feelings on interesting concepts. Yandere Simulator has been banned from Twitch.
Which we should probably go into what Yandere Simulator is. And there's actually some talk about renaming the game because of the anime trope and people not really knowing what a Yandere is. Essentially, Yandere is a girl who is greatly in love with someone to the point of violence and jealousy towards anyone that shows even the slightest affection towards their target of affection.
Right. If you've ever heard the term notice me senpai, it's like the ultimate extreme of that.
Yeah.
So...
Sorry,
go ahead.
I'm wanting to get the proper translation of it, but it's pretty much that.
Right. So, and for anyone out there who doesn't know exactly what the concept of the game is, you play someone who is in love with her senpai, and just like Rage says, she's extremely jealous of anybody who even shows even the slightest amount of interest in him. And so your goal in the game is to kill anyone who notices your senpai.
It's not just kill. You can basically humiliate them to the point that they won't show their face again.
Or make them commit suicide.
Yeah.
Or you can kill them. I think that you can just kind of kidnap them and not actually kill them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
and
100%
just torture
sure
them
on
for
that
a
one.
while.
Right.
Here's the proper definition of Yandere. Chiefly in Japanese fiction, a character who fits the archetype of being generally kind, loving, or gentle, but can suddenly switch to being aggressive or deranged.
Right.
And the alternate title that they were talking about, it's a breakdown of the word. It's the alternate title they're talking about is lovesick, which that's what Yandere means, is to be sick.
I've heard the title of Lovesick before as well, but that's not the official title yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
so
it's still
eventually,
Yandere Simulator.
right. But so because of these things, and there's some nudity in the game and some other things like that.
Well, it's not even nudity. It's censored nudity, and if you take off your clothes in the game or take off another person's clothes, there's steam clouds that appear, very anime-ish, that obscure the view of the naughty bits.
Right. But so there's that in there, and then there's, I'm gonna say, the concept of the game. A high school student torturing and murdering and whatnot other high school students is a pretty adult concept. And a few other things related to the game, like there's panty shots and like other things that you can take as you're like stalking these girls to.
Yeah, and we should note that the game is still in heavy development and will not be out for at least 2 years.
Oh yeah, it's in like the alpha stage. There's a playable version you can get, like a demo, and then he's done the developer has done some coverage with people and has done, taking in-game footage and posting it for people to see and stuff like that. But it's still way away from being finished. But so this game got banned on Steam, or not on Steam.
On Twitch.
I'm sorry, on Twitch. Yes, my apologies. Got banned on Twitch. And the developer, I mean, there's a lot of people who are confused why, because even though this game is fairly adult in nature, a lot of people have pointed out, and even the developer himself pointed this out in kind of his...
which we'll go down the list of prohibited games in just a moment.
Right, but so he pointed this out, that there are much, much worse games on the list than Yandere Simulator. And kind of, I felt like that video was a very respectful call out of Twitch, because he hasn't been able to get a solid answer on why his game is banned. And
now, granted, we are recording this several days after the ban, and there's been no response yet, but there could be one before this is posted, because there's usually a couple days delay.
Right. We record on Tuesday night / Wednesday morning, and the podcast comes out on Friday. So something might happen in the next couple of days, but as of right now, it's still banned. And this video that he made basically was, he was, saying that, hey, it's banned. They won't tell me why. I'm willing to make some changes to the game to get it unbanned, but I'm not compromising my vision. And the sooner they get back to me, the more likely we are to have good open dialogue.
Yeah, let's go down the list of prohibited games on Twitch, which this will be in the show notes, which is going to be fun. Thankfully, this is an alphabetical order, and Yandere would be last in alphabetical order on the fully banned. Just streaming these games will get you banned on Twitch, no matter what, I might add. You have Artificial Academy 1 and 2, which are a pair of visual novels with a heavy focus on sex. A game called Battle Rape, which, do I really need to say more on that one?
Yeah, I think that one's enough said.
BMX Triple X, which this is one of the older games on this list. It's sort of it was developed during the time that Tony Hawk was a very big game franchise. So someone thought, let's take a BMX game, kind of make it Tony Hawkish, and add half-naked women in it. But don't do either half very well.
Yeah, it looks awful. It's
especially for an early 2000 game.
Right. Like, even by those standards, it looks awful.
Let's see. Next up on the list is Cobra Club, which is essentially Dick Pic the game. You think I'm joking? Go look that up.
No, I looked some of these up too that I wasn't familiar with. Yeah, it's a funny to hear you say, but yeah, that's a good description of the game.
Which I understand why they don't win a lot of these on Twitch, but well, finish the list, then we'll get to thoughts. Let's see, Dramatical Murder, which is basically a boys' love, a gay visual novel with a lot of focus on sex and actually features rape as well. Griza 1 and 2, which is one of the weirder ones on the list. It's a Doom Total Conversion mod. And the only thing I could really find on it was that it talked about it being very blasphemous and offensive, but I never found any information on exactly what was in the game.
Is that the mod where...
I didn't want to fire it up.
Is that the mod where in order to kill the monsters, you have to rape them?
I don't know. I couldn't find any real information on it. It's possible.
I think that's it. I've seen a Doom mod that does that. You have to, like shooting the monsters stuns them, and then you have to go rape them, and that's what kills them.
Oh, you hang out in different circles than I do.
Yes, I do.
Honey Pop, which is probably the most well-known on this list, which if you don't know it, is basically a match 3 game / a dating sim, which has full sex in it and a lot of nudity. But it also has a censored version on Steam that, unless you put in a official patch, has no nudity on it whatsoever. I mean, there's still sex in it, of course, but you don't see anything.
That's not 100% true. Even the patched version.
Oh, there isn't? Well, I haven't played Honey Pop.
Oh, I've played that. I've played Honey Pop a lot. I love that
I didn't
game.
know that the censored version on Steam still... I'm guessing breast then.
Yeah, that's what you get on the Steam version.
Okay, so that's probably why it's on this list then.
And there's also like real cut down on like the kind of the dirt. What's the right way to say it? There's a lot of extra things in the sex bits in the uncensored version. We'll say that much. I think that's a good way to say that.
You sound like a pro on this.
Do what?
You sound like a pro on this.
Man, I played that game a lot more than I probably should have. It's like one of my guilty pleasure games.
See, Kamdori Academy Meister?
Meister?
Okay.
Alchemy Meister? That's how I'd say that.
I'm very bad at pronouncing words I'm not familiar with, which we'll get to in the emails. Basically, another visual novel with lots of sex. Putrin to Ohio. Basically, a Japanese game where you're taking a bath with a girl and gripping her. Rayplay, a game about stalking and raping women. Rinse and Repeat, a game about showering with a guy and helping him wash, if you know what I mean.
Sounds like fun to me.
Secura Angels, Secura Beach 1 and 2, Secura Santa, Secura Spirit, Secura Fantasy, Secura Swim Club.
They got the whole Secura line. Oh, they don't have
just
Secura
mashing
Clicker.
them all together. They're all basically visual novels with varying levels of sex and nudity in them. Some of them, from what I can tell, don't have any nudity in them whatsoever, even though that could be wrong on that.
And some of them have lots.
Oh, yeah.
I have, I think, the entire Sakura library. I think I have them all.
Second Life, which is an online sandbox game, which has lewd player-made areas and content, but the thing is that you have to go seek them out. It's not in it by itself.
Right.
Which is a game that I'll probably come back to on this list when we talk about all the banned games. The GOG game, which essentially is a quiz game where you're rewarded with and answer questions about videos with partly naked women in them. What, no comments on this one?
The guy name is pretty old, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that one has full video in it, so it's...
So FMV. I mean, it's old
it's still
enough
the
that,
early 2000s, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I have never played it or anything, so... Makes me think of The Man Show, though.
Yeah, pretty much. It's basically The Man Show if they weren't on Comedy Central.
Right.
What's Under Your Blanket, which is essentially a stealth masturbation game.
Yes, it is. You are absolutely correct.
And it sounds like you have a lot of experience here as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Witch Trainer, which from everything I could find, I wasn't able to find the official site for this, just some torrents. It's basically a simulation game about training Hermione Granger with lots of nudity and sexual content.
Never played that one, but I've seen it before.
and Yandere Simulator, those are the fully banned on Twitch, instant ban. And then there's 3 more on here that you're permitted to play play them if you're not playing the adults only rated version from the ESRB. Hatred, which got a lot of flack before it came out. And if you don't know, it's essentially just a mass murder simulator.
Yep, it's top-down, basically twin-stick shooter.
Yeah, and the whole idea is basically you're trying to rack up the biggest body count you can.
Yep.
Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy Director's Cut, story-based game, and this is probably the tamest game on this list, content-wise, because it's really banned just because there's an uncensored sex scene that you could potentially get if you make all the right choices.
Yep. The only time I've actually ever completed that game, I got the sex scene. And let me tell you, there's nothing to write home about that scene.
Well, it's also a fairly old game, so I imagine that there's no physics.
Yeah, the boobs are kind of triangles, or I guess pyramids. Like it's old
also,
enough
you're
that it
banging
suffers
Madonna.
from that. Yeah, absolutely. But no, there's no physics involved in that.
And then the final one is Manhunt 2 Uncut, which is basically just a murder simulator. Or semi-murder simulator. It's a stealth game where you're going around killing people, but it's very graphic in the killing scenes.
Right.
And that's the list.
Yeah. So, of all the games on this list, let me just think. The games that I think actually deserve to be on the list.
I mean, pretty much all the ones are just, basically sex games.
Right. Games that I don't think should be banned. I think that I could give in on Honey Pop. It's risque enough, even in the censored version, that to keep up with their. It doesn't deserve an exception, I suppose is the way to say it from their terms of service.
Here's my counterpoint. If you ban Honey Pop, why is Witcher not on this list?
As in, like, The Witcher?
The Witcher. Well, the Witcher series.
That is true. You could get away with it in the first Witcher because they kind of have, like, fade to black scenes.
Well, but then you get the cards that have breasts on them.
You do get the cards, yeah. I don't know. That's a good question.
That's been the point that I've heard a lot of people make, and it's a very good one. If you ban any game that has nudity in it, no matter the context,
yeah, because the censored
you're going to end up with a very, very long list of games that are very, very popular.
Yeah. But Second Life I don't think should be on there, unless Second Life has undergone a huge update/upgrade since the last time I played it.
The reason Second Life was on here, from everything I could tell, is the potential of lewdness, which is my primary problem with banning Yandere Simulator. When it's in heavy development, it's the same problem I had when they banned Hatred, or partially banned Hatred now, is that they are banning it because the potential that it could be something that is untoward, that is something that is, well, let's use since we're making fun of mass media right now for gaming, we'll use their favorite word when they criticize something. It's gross.
You mean Polygon's favorite word to?
Oh, Polygon. It's spread.
Yeah, I know. But Polygon is the one that comes to mind. Like, they've got the reputation for saying stuff like that.
Yeah, it's gross. It's untoward. It's icky. I mean, they sound like a bunch of elementary school kids. And I think that's the reason why some of these games are on here. I'll give you Honey Pop just because of context. But things like Yandere Simulator, like, all their partly banned games, with possibly the exception of Fahrenheit, are just, they don't belong there because it's not the sexual content that they're banning everything else for.
The only thing that I could see them actually banning Yandere Simulator for is the actual concept behind the game, which I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about that, to be honest. Because, well, I mean, games like, and the developer of Yandere Simulator said this too, like, Grand Theft Auto 5 is fully streamable and there's an actual interactive graphic torture scene in Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, granted, that's not like the basis of the entire game, and that's kind of the basis of Yandere Simulator, but I mean, still.
Well, the thing is that you could go to the entire game and not do that in Yandere Simulator.
True, you can. You have to do it if you want to finish the story of Grand Theft Auto 5.
And I'm just looking at this entire list. And is there any game on here that you could call a AAA game? Maybe Manhunt? I mean, Fahrenheit wasn't a huge game. It definitely wasn't an indie title, but it wasn't a major release.
I think maybe out of the entire list, Second Life is the only game that I could be convinced to call AAA. Maybe. Everything else on this list, a lot of visual novels, which, I mean, are indie games.
Yeah, which are very, very niche to begin with.
BMX XXX is not an indie game, but it's kind of in the old school, middle of the road developer category that doesn't really exist anymore. It's definitely not AAA. I think the Guy game kind of falls into that category too, but still, I mean, these are old games that, aren't supported anymore. Excuse me, things like that. So, no, there's nothing really on this list that would be considered AAA.
Yeah, it's like Twitch has two sets of rules for games that are below a certain level of popularity or have a certain level of money behind them. I'm not sure which I want to call it. And ones that fall below it.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, actually. I was going to say, this might just be the cynic in me, but I don't see any big
but
name
then you're
titles on
talking
this
to
list.
a big ball of salt and cynicism.
True. But, yep, that very well could be part of it. We also don't know the reasons why they choose to ban the games individually. Like, you can go look at their big overall list of policies on this. And,
yeah, I mean, the only game the game series that is pretty much fully banned is the Sakura series.
Right.
Well, it has several entries on here, I should say.
As far as it goes in the Sakura series, and fair enough if they want to ban it for this, but there is some of them that have full nude scenes, but they literally are visual novels with no movement. Like if something moves across the screen, it kind of like does that little disappear thing between.
Yeah. Or it's like a cardboard cutout going across the screen.
Right. Sakura's not like that, but
that's the general idea whenever a visual novel has movement.
Yeah. Yep. So, I don't know. I wish that they had the reason for each game being banned. Then I might be willing to give them a little more credit on why they're banning not just Yandere Simulator, but certain other games on this list versus why they're not banning others. But as much as it sucks, they're not required to do that, so I doubt that we will ever know the real reason why these games were banned.
And they also note that the mature-rated versions of adult-only titles are permitted. And they single out Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which had a adults-only re-rating on it. Whenever the hot coffee content in it was discovered, which, mind you, requires a mod to unlock.
Right.
I think there may have been some sort of weird memory hack to unlock it in the console version, if I recall correctly, but it's been so long ago, and if there is a way to do it in the console version, it has to be a very, very specific way to do it. You have to be intending to do it. There's no way to do it accidentally.
Yeah, you could do it on the console versions. I don't know the process for doing it. I think you had to have a modded console or like something done on your memory card to unlock it.
Yeah, there was no way to do it accidentally.
Code. Yeah, there's no way to access it without hacking it, basically.
Yeah, there was no accidentally pressing, like triangle up.
It's like, oh, I got the really crappy looking sex scene where everyone is fully clothed.
Oh, draw humping.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I think that just kind of that's kind of the last thing I really have to say about it. I don't feel like some of the games that are on this list deserve to be on the list.
Well, I would like to see Twitch, and I know there's no way that they'll do this, partly because they're owned by Amazon now, aren't they? Aren't they bought by Amazon?
Yep, they were bought by Amazon.
Yeah, and Amazon has some weird policies to begin with.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Twitch have it where you could set your stream to adults only, and you have to uh, uh, have a authentication where you're saying that you're adults only. There's an age gate. Oh wait, there is. How
Yeah.
about that? And they're not using it for this content. I mean, granted, I don't think anybody would want to stream BMX Triple X nowadays,
No.
or some of these more sexually inclined visual novels. But it should be an option for somebody that wants to do it.
I would
In my
totally
opinion.
stream them.
Maybe I'm
totally
just in
stream them.
complete anarchy land. I don't know.
I bet there's an audience for that can't be served because they don't allow them. I would totally do it. I'd pick up the visual novel
There are
audience.
other streaming servers or services out there. It's just Twitch is the big one out there that everyone thinks of when it's gaming content.
Right.
And I don't think they're leaving a lot of stuff on the table, except for maybe like Hatred. Well, they're partly banned game list, I should say. And possibly Yandere Simulator, which I will say that Yandere Simulator does look like it would be a good streaming game.
Yeah, there's just so many things you can do, and it's such an interesting concept. Like, I'm fascinated with this game because I'm of my psychology background. Just like
I knew you would be.
it's so interesting and intriguing to me. Like, I want to play it just to see like how it makes me feel and things like that, because this is a game that could be very thought-provoking and controversial. Hopefully, like the positive version of controversy. Not like
There's no such thing as the positive version of controversy in gaming media. Don't you know that?
Yeah.
That's gross.
But I find it really intriguing, and I'm probably gonna buy it whenever it actually comes out. But so I don't know. Twitch, you're making me confused about why you're doing things.
Well, Twitch and Amazon both have weird stuff behind the scenes going on that I think that they could use a lot more transparency. We've talked a lot about communication, game devs doing it poorly and causing a bunch of problems. And here is Twitch doing the exact same thing.
Yep. Is that your final thoughts?
That was my little rant I was building up for.
All right, then. Moving on to something else we get to rant about. The Nintendo NX. We actually had a little bit of a back and forth on whether or not to do this, and we ultimately decided that discussing the rumors would probably make some good content. So here we are. We're going to discuss the... How long is the list, actually?
Well, I've picked out probably about 5 or 6... I picked out 5 rumors that I wanted to talk about.
Okay, well, let's just go through
I'm sure
those.
that there's more that I'm missing.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole bunch of ridiculous rumors out there.
Yeah, the internet just went crazy probably around Friday or so.
Yeah.
Around the time that the podcast came out, the last episode. With just all these speculation. And then by Monday, everything's like calmed down because it was found out that it was just a bunch of rumor milling.
Yeah, but the thing is, we really don't know all that much about the NX. We know a few things, or at least the things that Nintendo has told us, but there are some of the rumors that actually seem kind of plausible, and then some
there's some that are
seem,
just complete bunk.
yeah, just seem completely ridiculous. So let's go down your list and see if I feel like we need to add anything else.
Okay, well, the first one is, of course, the price tag.
Yeah. Surprisingly, I actually feel like this one is doable. But in order to do so, I think that they would be unable to meet some of the other...
we should probably say what the price tag is going to be, according to the rumors.
Yeah, according to the rumors, the price tag is going to be around $200. Somewhere in like the $150 to $250 range.
Yeah, I've seen people talking about all sort of that range, but 200 is about the middle of the road that a lot of the rumors are kind of agreeing on.
Right. And so I do feel like that's possible. Nintendo's history has been to make budget gaming consoles for the masses. So if they released something similar to the Wii U that already has developed technology for, maybe squeeze in a little extra power where they could or something like that, I feel like it's doable. But in order to hit that target, they're going to suffer from the problem that they've had the last couple of generations of consoles, which is they're still going to be underpowered. And I feel like Nintendo's really got to come out swinging with their next console release.
And also, another problem that Nintendo's had, this isn't on the list, but just the fact that they're doing this sort of middle step on the console cycle.
Yeah.
Where the PlayStation and Xbox are like in lockstep with one another, each one coming out within a reasonable margin of the other one. Then Nintendo's about half a step behind, coming out towards the middle of the console release.
Yeah, they also, in that half step, is where they catch up to the current power of the consoles, which sounds weird because consoles are super weak in comparison to, gaming PCs and things like that. But, I mean, it takes them that extra half cycle to catch up. And I kind of get why they do it.
The last console generation just lasted almost, a decade?
Yeah, about 10 years. 9 or 10 years. But during that time, they had the Wii and the Wii U, which the Wii was still underpowered compared to even the original Xbox and the PS4. Like, they had roughly the same amount of power.
Well, the Wii was more of a gimmick console than anything else.
Yeah. And then the Wii U, when it came out, it had roughly the same power as the Xbox 360. It had a little bit more, but by that point, it was like, well, the next generation of consoles are already being talked about, which, the Xbox One and the PS4. And the Wii U was, again, right back there to being the lowest powerful console. So I think in order to meet that price point, they're going to have to do that again. They might be able to catch up to the current generation in terms of power and keep it that price. Might. But if they do that, they certainly won't be able to pass them. And that's what they really need. They need to get third-party developers back on their side. And one of the things that's kept them away for so long is that the console's too weak.
And that they have a lot of gimmicky stuff like the motion controls and the tablet.
Yeah, that's very true. Honestly, I hope that this one is wrong. I'd love to have a cheap new Nintendo console to play with, but I just don't want it to be weak.
Which a $200 console would be pretty weak. It would be basically the equivalent of the modern consoles, I should say.
Yeah, at best, they could make it on parity with the Xbox One, probably the Xbox One, which is already the weakest of the modern console generation. I don't really consider the Wii U to be a part of the modern console generation.
Yeah, Nintendo's like on its own little stepping, on its own march towards where consoles are going nowadays.
Yeah.
But as a counterpoint, after the new consoles came out, there was a sudden jump of power overall, just hardware-wise. So it could be that they could do a bit of a stronger console for a cheaper price point.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible. Plus, I mean, Nintendo is one of the big three. They've got the weight to throw into getting some really good deals on the manufacturing for it. I mean, it's not impossible, but I feel like it's unlikely. But I do think that one's a fairly reasonable rumor. That's in step with Nintendo's policies over the last few years anyways in dealing with this stuff. So, and if there's one company that can pull it off, it's probably Nintendo, because they've been doing it for years at this point.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
900p, 60 FPS with 4K streaming of video.
The first part of that is actually, I think that's pretty believable. The Wii U can do that with...
Which it may tie into... sorry to cut you off, but it may tie into the price point of being a lower price console because they're sacrificing a bit of resolution. But why would they go a bit lower resolution but then the higher FPS? It's kind of a weird thing there.
I don't know. That's counterintuitive to what the console market does, because they're all
Especially Nintendo. They tend to really go for the quality experience.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, granted, their games are a lot more stylish, but they tend to go for a good quality. I'm not sure what the typical resolution / frame rate is on a Nintendo console, although...
The Wii U actually, this is what I was going to say, I feel like this one's completely believable because the Wii U can do that now with certain games. Which games can be played at 60 FPS? I know Mario Kart can. I think Smash Bros. Is 60 FPS. Pretty much they're like top of the line, like their big heavy hitting first party titles can all do 60 FPS, and then they do between 720 and 1080p. I think Mario Kart's the only 1080p 60 FPS game, but it can reach that. So with a power increase, if they stick to their I don't really know if it's economical design or the fact that
I found a list of it's a user-made list of the game's resolutions and frame rates.
Okay.
The only negative Wii U exclusive game with native 1080p and 60 FPS is Super Smash Brothers.
Really? I thought Mario Kart was 1080p 60 FPS. I'm pretty sure they were bragging about that.
Mario Kart is 720p 60 FPS according to this. Mario Kart 8.
Okay, 720 60. I know that they were really proud that it was running at 60 FPS. Like, that was one of the big selling points for that game. It's like, oh, we can do 60 FPS, and we're just Nintendo. It's like, we don't try
well, they sacrificed resolution to do it.
Which, to be honest, I'm okay with that.
I'll go down this list real quick. Bayonetta 2 or 7020p with 60 FPS with some struggles according to this. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze 720p 60 FPS. Hyrule Warriors 720p 30 FPS with struggles.
Yeah, there's a lot.
480p with 30 FPS during co-op with struggles.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on screen in that game, so I can believe that.
See, I talked about Mario Kart, new Super Mario Brothers U 720p 60 FPS, new Super Luigi U 720 60 FPS.
So
I'm actually not seeing. Well, never mind. Super Smash Brothers is the only one that I see. No, Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker HD, 1080p but 30 FPS with minor struggles. And everything else is pretty much 720p.
Yeah, I think that is almost maybe completely owed to the fact that they don't go for realistic art styles. They've always done very cartoony.
Go for the stylish approach. It's the same reason why some older games just look terrible while others look passable. It's the art style.
Right. And I think that that's how they can get away with doing that. And that's, probably how they're going to be able to get away with 960. Because even just a slightly more powerful console could obviously push those numbers considering the styles that Nintendo uses. I don't want to say style over substance, but artistic style over photorealism, I think, is the right comparison to make. So I actually think that one's completely possible, but I'm not...
The 4K streaming, though, is a bit weird on this.
Well, you said this earlier, the fact that it says streaming. I could imagine that would be streaming through a service like Netflix, which has 4K streaming. Or maybe, and this is kind of in connection with another rumor that is a little more absurd, but maybe... it can utilize the power of your PC over a network or something along those lines. Yeah, which ties into
a later rumor.
Right. So I see how that they could pull it off, but they do say streaming, not just 4K, graphics or 4K, I don't know, video or something. It does say streaming. So I could see how that one would be possible, just utilizing another service to do it. And just, having your Wii U connected to it, like Netflix, which does it already, or a couple other services that do it. YouTube has got some 4K stuff.
Okay, so let's go from a plausible rumor to one that is most likely completely insane.
Right.
Them talking about the possibility that the Nintendo NX will be cartridge-based.
Yeah, if that one turned out to be true, Nintendo would just have lost... would have lost consoles forever at this point. Consoles after the Super Nintendo were bad. Nintendo lost a lot of market share when they decided to go with consoles for the N64. Or not consoles, cartridges for the N64.
Well, even the GameCube suffered because they didn't have full discs. They had these little mini disc things.
Yeah. So if they go with cartridges now, that's like 2 steps back because even the console market is seeing a huge growth in digital distribution.
And the fact that cartridges are just so much more expensive to create versus discs. Even though there is a bigger problem with piracy when it comes to discs because it's a lot easier to create a disc.
Yeah. The only positive benefit I see from that, and this was always the case with cartridges, is that since you do have a cartridge, you can put computing power inside the cartridge in the form of like RAM or like tiny processors to just assist in the game.
The FX chip, are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about the FX chip. They had other things like that though both in the SNES era and the N64. But
yeah, but they also had the ability for expansion slots on the N64 with extra RAM.
They did do that, yeah, which helped. But that is the only benefit I can think of. So they can offload some of the processing power onto the cartridge itself, but
which would just jack up the price even further.
Yeah, and there's just no other benefit to it.
Oh, there is the durability that a disc can only take so much damage by a cartridge, if built well, is pretty tanky when it comes to just taking the casual bumps and knocks that a kid would normally have. Which, let's face it, Nintendo does cater to a younger market than the PlayStation and the Xbox.
They do indeed do that. I was pretty convinced, and this is kind of a side to this, that they were going to have an all-digital console because they've just made some really big improvements to their Nintendo Online, like finally making it account-based versus device-based and doing things to improve the user experience and the multiplayer that runs through it. And then at some point in the last probably 6 months, there was some concept, or there were some schematics and things like that for a possible new Nintendo console that showed it without a drive at all, just a bigger hard drive,
which would save a bit on production cost, which could tie into the price unit or the price tag.
Yeah, potentially.
The price per unit is what I was trying to say, which would tie into a lower price tag.
Yeah, potentially. So I hope that they go to an all-digital console, but I don't think that they'll actually do that. A lot of people don't, not just in the United States but around the world, don't have good enough internet to support that. They may not want to do that. Nintendo tends to have the biggest audience of collectors who like to get, the physical discs and
just look at some of the game collections online.
And Amiibo.
Or just watch an angry video game nerd see his collection in the background of any of his videos.
Yeah, it's huge. So they tend to have the biggest population of that. So that might not go over so well with their biggest audience. But I still think that overall that's not a credible rumor.
What do you think? Sort of a mixture of this where it's they sell their games in amiibo form.
Oh my gosh!
Can you imagine doing that?
We're gonna have a discussion about that eventually. That's in our topic list, and I have a lot to say about all those kinds of things: Amiibo, Skylander, Disney Infinity. Most of it not very good. But that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, I'm just imagining. Sorry, completely off topic, but the special edition, the new Mario game that is only printed once in a golden amiibo form.
Everybody's got to pass the golden amiibo around to get the game.
No, you have to. No, the amiibo has to sit on the console the entire time.
Oh.
Because it has the computing power in it. And when it overheats, Mario bursts into flames.
And that's how you get Flame Mario. You heat it up. All right.
But my next rumor that I saw that I have on the list is it being a combination of their handheld line and their console line being some sort of weird mashup of the two, where the console has sort of the Wii U tablet that you could take on the road and have the entire console be able to play a game portably.
I found that one to be really intriguing. I
don't think it's possible with this price tag.
No, I don't think it's possible because you'd have to put all of the computing power in whatever you want to call the actual handheld version, or at least most of it. But I do see it being possible. Nintendo is pretty much the only guy left around in the mobile market that's not phones or tablets.
Well, there is the Sony Vita.
Right.
No, sorry.
The JRPG and dating simulator handheld. But so I could see
Oh,
Nintendo.
so in other words, you own one.
No, actually, I wish I did, but I don't. But I could see them doing this, or maybe in some way like making it compatible with the 3DS, where you can, I don't know, link them up somehow, and you can play your 3DS games on the pad, so that the screen will be bigger, or so that your gaming experience will be better. But I don't really see how that they can make the whole thing portable.
Yeah, I do think this is plausible, but the thing is that it counteracts the price tag once again. Because of just all the extra stuff, you have to have the battery, you have to have a lot of extra circuitry. And I don't think that will work with the price tag. And also, if this is true, it kind of leans more towards them being some sort of physical media or a digital media. Because you really can't have a disk drive bouncing around a lot.
No.
And even hard drives, they would have to do some sort of solid state. And that is still a very expensive technology for the capacity that you have. So it's either going to be a very low capacity memory-wise, or it's going to be very expensive.
Not really. I mean, they could do what they do with the 3DS and offload the games onto SD cards.
Possible.
You can get huge SD cards now that aren't super expensive. And I'm sure that they could get...
yeah, sorry, I'm kind of used to Sony completely screwing the consumer when it comes to portable media. And being proprietary.
No, you can. I mean, I own whatever the last version of the DS was before they went to the 3DS. I think it was the DSi.
I don't know. Honestly, looking at the 3DS line, it looks like somebody spilled their hand of Scrabble tiles.
Yeah, but I mean, I had some old SD cards for digital camera, and I was like, well, I'll just use these as my memory cards. All you have to do is a quick format, and then you can just use your SD cards. And they already put games basically on SD cards. I think they're proprietary for Nintendo specs, but I mean, when else am I gonna?
Yeah, which thinking about that could lead to some credence of them going back to a cartridge based if they do like the SD cards. But those SD cards have nowhere the capacity of discs, do they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As just a regular consumer, you can buy like a 64 gigabyte SD card for $20 on Amazon.
I haven't kept up with SD card technology.
Hang on, let me just do a quick search on Amazon for SD card. Let's see what we get. I had to buy a few.
Well, you also have to remember the price per unit once again. Because if they push this up too much, they have to pass it along to the consumer, and that drives up the price of their games. And even though there would be people out there that would buy a Mario game no matter what.
Let's see. You can buy... Okay, so you can get a 64 gigabyte SD card for $20 on Amazon. And it looks like the biggest capacity is 256 gigabytes. I mean, that one's kind of expensive, but that is overkill for storing games on. Nintendo games tend to be a lot smaller than, you know, your typical PC game or other console release. They could probably get away with a 32 gigabyte SD card, which you can get for less than $10, and that's us as a consumer paying the full markup. I'm sure they could negotiate a deal to get them for half that, maybe less. So
but wasn't that about the price point of cartridges back in the day? Per unit?
Cartridges were, I think, $50.
No. I mean to produce, not to buy.
Oh yeah, they were super cheap. Plastic molding and some circuitry. So I could see that as a possible avenue that they could take this. Potentially, you could just buy an SD card, and then you could store all of your digital content that you download onto an SD card. Most Wii U games are 8 gigabytes because they still use a DVD standard. So they're between 8 and 10 gigabytes. So if they were able to keep the same size, I mean, you could get a 64 gigabyte SD card, and you could keep about 6 games on it. It's not too bad.
It's an interesting idea, at least. I'm not sure if they're going to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if they took it mobile, like the rumor says, but otherwise, I don't really see a point in doing that. Just put some onboard storage on the unit itself, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, which being a mobile console also has its own design problems of making all the controls and everything on the console itself, and having to make it small enough that you could comfortably hold.
Actually, the Wii U gamepad is extremely comfortable for its size. I couldn't imagine it being portable. It feels kind of fragile, but if they did something to sturdy it up, it's actually very comfortable in your hands, which is surprising. It doesn't look like it'd be comfortable, but I actually prefer using the gamepad to the.
Yeah, but it's a bit large to be considered a portable game console.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can't see taking it portable like that, but they have made a smaller version that's only about 70-80% the size of the original model, which makes it roughly the size of a 3DS XL. People carry those around in their pocket.
Well, shall we move on to the last rumor then?
By all means,
Because this rumor has all sorts of gray area, and I'm still not convinced on it.
I think I know which one you're talking about, but go ahead and read it off.
Working with smartphones and PCs.
There's also, I've heard that it would be compatible with the other consoles.
Yeah, backwards compatibility adds a whole other thing, which I didn't even. I may have skipped over that.
Well, it's not necessarily backwards compatible. I'm talking about being compatible with the PS4 and the Xbox One.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I don't even know what that means.
There's no way that Sony and Microsoft would allow that.
No way. I don't even know what that means, though. Like, it just says be compatible. What does that mean? Can you somehow connect it to boost power or use some of your services on the other console? Like, there's no way. I agree with you. I don't really think there's a point in talking about that one, honestly. But the other bit, being compatible with Android devices and PCs.
Well, I'll expand that. There was also some talk of it actually running Android on its own. It being Android OS, sort of Steambox-ish.
I don't see that happening.
Steambox is running Linux. I should clear that up before we get the emails. But having a more open source OS is what I was talking about.
Yeah, I definitely don't see that happening. Nintendo doesn't do anything open source. Like, basically, if you don't play by Nintendo's rules, you don't get games on their console. They're very strict in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, just look at how long it took Binding of Isaac to get on there because of just issues.
But I do see it being in some way compatible with a PC or other Android devices or maybe even an iPhone. So from the PC, I could see you being able to connect to it and most likely be able to stream media from your PC to your NX or whatever they decide to change the name to.
Yeah, there was some people talking about it being cross.
Oh, that would be interesting. But that or potentially, I feel like this would be more difficult, but potentially drawing power from it, kind of using it like a Microsoft.
A giant expansion pack?
Yeah, basically. I don't really see that happening, or at least that being much less likely, but it could be possible.
There's no way that would happen. Microsoft and Sony would sue Nintendo out of existence if they tried to do something like that.
Well, I mean, it also could be for game streaming, actually, now that I think about it, because both other consoles have got ways to stream to other devices.
That's more likely, but both other companies are very protective on their streaming services.
That's true, but I mean, basically, Microsoft says stream it to your PC. It only works with Windows 10, but I mean, you just basically stream games straight from your PC or straight from your console to your PC. Sony allows Vita, and I think you can stream to a PC with Sony consoles. I might be wrong on that one, but I think I've heard someone talk about doing that before.
I'd be surprised, but what would be the point?
Honestly, I have no idea. That's just one of the things that could be possible. I mean, people love to play their games the way they want to. If you've got a much higher quality monitor than you have TV, and obviously anything is more high quality than the actual screen on the controller itself, I could see wanting to play your games in a little bit crisper way, or maybe in your nice comfy computer
well, now
chair.
that you mentioned the screen on the monitor, if they do the Wii U style where they have the tablet or some sort of mobile component, maybe that would be the reason to stream.
Yeah. So I see that as being possible. And then kind of with your mobile device, the same thing as I said first for the PC, streaming media from it. I can't really see how else they would want to utilize that unless it's some kind of controller feature. Like certain games on the consoles and on PC too, now there's a couple, will let you use your phone as an extra peripheral for like the dancing games. What is it? Dance Dance? No, that's not it.
Let's Dance?
Let's Dance, yeah.
The only reason why I know that was I saw a chance to get a review copy of that, and no.
But you can use your phone as the little wand or whatever to do dances if you don't have a Kinect or whatever on your preferred console. And then some game lets you use it as a microphone. I think it's SingStars, which is like a karaoke game. I'm pretty sure you can use your phone as a microphone.
Yeah, pretty much all the niche games, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the Jack's Party Pack or whatever it is, it's like a bunch of trivia games and stuff. You can use your phone to play that game. So I see some other ways that they could use it, but other than that or streaming media, I don't know why you'd want to connect your phone to your Wii U.
Yeah, there's just so many weird rumors in this. Now that finishes off my list. I assume you have a couple more.
Not really. You hit all the big ones for me, and I'm trying to be conscious of our time. Actually, well, this isn't technically a rumor directly for the NX, but there is a rumor that Zelda is being developed as a launch title for the NX, and they think that the Wii U is going to not get a Zelda title at all.
That's interesting, and I know a friend of mine that would be furious.
She
would be displeased.
I'm going to get probably many angry messages about this, but I've never been a big fan of the Zelda series. I played Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask to completion. They were all right. I've played some of the older ones, and then I've played Wind Waker, and I played what was the one with like you could turn into a wolf. I can't even think of the name of it. I didn't finish that one. I got really bored with it. But so I'm just not the biggest fan of the Zelda series, but I recognize that it's
well. Send the hate mail to vglpodcast@gmail.com.
There you go.
I'll be getting the hate mail too, because the only Zelda game I've played almost to completion was Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. That's the gray brick of doom that you could bash somebody to death with and then still play the game. Played a handful of others, but I've never gotten too far into them. And actually, the most I've played of a Zelda-esque title is actually Darksiders, which I'm currently playing on my YouTube channel.
So I'm not really invested in that series at all, but I see like very clearly that Zelda is one of the biggest franchises that Nintendo owns in terms of, both its actual sheer size and the huge player base that's there for it. So if they do that, skip an entire console and not give it any Zelda games at all, that could be.
What do you call Hyrule Warriors?
Do what?
What do you call Hyrule Warriors?
That is Dynasty Warriors with a Zelda skin. There's a lot of people that.
And I just thought of something. Has there ever been a Nintendo console with a Zelda launch title? It's pretty much always been Mario for Nintendo, hasn't it?
Yeah, Mario's always the launch title.
Or either a launch title or very, very shortly afterwards.
Yeah, I don't
I may
think
be
so.
mistaken on that one because I don't follow Nintendo that closely.
When did the N64 come out? What year?
Mid-90s, if I recall correctly.
Ocarina of Time came out late 90s. And that was the first Zelda game on the N64.
Now, let me do a quick search. It came out 1964. Or, sorry, 1996. If it was 64, that would be impressive.
That would be extremely impressive. Somebody time
Sorry,
traveled.
I was looking at 64 and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and Ocarina of Time came out either in like 98 or 99, and Majora's Mask came out after that. Those were the two that were on N64. Wind Waker came out on the GameCube.
Yeah, we're having to search this because we don't know this off the top of our heads.
Yeah, like
Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, 1998, so 2 years after.
Let's see, Wind Waker released in 2002. The GameCube released, I think, 2001. Yeah, 2001.
So there's never been a launch title
No.
for Zelda. That'd be quite the change.
Wait a second. Wii release date 2006. Zelda. What's the name of that game? Twilight.
Twilight Princess?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. The one that I got bored with.
And remember, send your hate mail to vglpodcast@gmail.com.
It came out. Okay, so
I bet Jared in the title.
So the Wii released in 2006, and so did Twilight Princess. Let me see if it was actually a release title.
Yeah, it's close enough to call it a release title.
November 19th for the Wii. And November 19th. So it was a release title, or a launch title.
Okay, so they do have precedent of a release title for Zelda, and I completely forgot about Twilight Princess. But then again, I'm not a big Zelda fan.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was. I'm sure we probably already have an email talking about Twilight Princess now.
Yeah.
Just yelling.
So I suppose they have precedent for that, but they've never skipped an entire generation. And I suppose that you could say that. Well, crap, I'm not doing good tonight. The Zelda game, Dynasty Warriors, Hyrule Warriors. There we go.
Yeah, considering I've said it several times already.
I know. So, I mean, you could say that Hyrule Warriors could count just because it is at least Zelda skinned. But, I mean, it's Dynasty Warriors. It's not Zelda. So,
Do you think they'll do a was it Twilight Princess that had the multi-release on the previous console and the next one, on the GameCube and Wii?
I don't think so.
I know that they had one that was essentially the same game on both consoles with slight tweaks to, I think it was mostly graphics.
That was Wind Waker,
Okay.
which I guess Wind Waker re-released on the Wii U. So you might be able to... No, wait, Wind Waker was on the Wii. Did Wind Waker get a Wii U release? We're really, really Zelda and Nintendo experts here. Wind Waker.
I think we need a guest that's just comes on with pointy ears because they're that big of a Zelda fan. Has a coat hanger with a little light bulb hanging off of it. That's constantly saying, hey, hey, hey.
Hey, listen. I don't want to see an ad about whatever that movie is. 2013, so that would have been Wii U. So they have had a Zelda game on Wii U, but it's not a new Zelda game. Did I hear you say something?
Well, I was saying technically they had one.
Yeah, technically, but I wouldn't really consider that one either, since it's a re-release. So there's precedent for them doing that, and maybe fans would be okay with just the re-releases, but...
Or try to do some sort of weird multi-release where they do it on the old console and the new one and have an expanded graphical fidelity or maybe content on the new one.
Yep, they did that. That's actually got some precedent as well. That was done by both Xbox and PlayStation or Sony whenever they released multiple consoles.
Yeah, and the Zelda series has it as well. So
yeah.
It's very possible. And they have delayed the new Zelda game, which I'm blanking on the name of, before already. And it's going open world, isn't it? Or more open world, I should say.
Yeah, it's supposed to be more open world. I saw some places referring to it as like the Zelda's version of the Elder Scrolls series. So we'll see.
Yeah, which, considering my opinions of the Elder Scrolls series as of late, I'm not too keen on that.
Yeah. But
Remember, send your hate mail to vglpodcast@gmail.com.
you guys don't know anything about Zelda and you suck. All right, so I think that we're pretty wrapped up on that. I mean, we hit some of the big rumors. There's a ton, but some of them are just too stupid to even talk about.
Yeah.
And also, it's time for us to move on to the debate that we've been saying we were going to have for, well, the last several episodes.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is going to be a long one or not. It's going to be interesting, though.
Yeah, so 30 versus 60 FPS and beyond. Now, the game industry and games media have gotten into a really nasty habit in the last few years of coming up with defenses for why they keep games at 30 FPS.
You mean their cinematic visions?
Right. Now, I think that 30 FPS can be okay for certain genres or certain visual styles.
I'm not sure if I agree with visual styles outside of things like the South Park games, where they're going for it looking like the TV show.
Right.
But I do say that it's acceptable for certain games. Like, I could play Civ in 30 FPS and I wouldn't see a problem.
Yeah, most anything that's
the
turn-based.
animations would probably be a little bit more choppy. That's even if you play with the animations. If you're playing Civ 5 at 30 FPS, you probably have the animations turned off to save your processor to try to get more oomph out of the game.
And I absolutely
so you probably
would
won't
do
even
that.
see the animations at all.
I do that on my laptop, actually, because my laptop is just the worst. And if I leave the animations turned on, I'll lose like 10 or 15 FPS every time one of them would play. But yeah, I can see it for certain other visual styles as well. If someone genuinely is trying to emulate the look of a movie for, say, a less interactive game, I could see it making sense, but you have to stick more to like actual cinematography. You have to hit those right camera angles and things like that. And 30 FPS does
more like a film than a game.
Right.
Which would be a Metal Gear Solid game, wouldn't it?
Probably, yeah. But so, I see that
Remember, send your hate mail to vglpodcast@gmail.com.
So I see that there is a place for it. And then when it comes to certain hardware things that you're designing for, 30 FPS is it's not the bare minimum. You can play games at 20 FPS as long as there's not too much movement required. And it can still look all right. So if you're trying to design something that's like super bare bones to run on everything, I could see you compromising and hard locking it at 30 FPS. Because the less frames your machine has to render, the less power that it needs to have.
I would say if it's coming down to you having to run the game at 20 FPS, you should be cutting the resolution.
That's very true. I don't think that you should shoot for a 20 FPS target, but 20 FPS is...
Unless you're making some sort of parody game about the game industry.
Yeah. 20 FPS, though, is kind of like the bare minimum where your eye is fooled just enough that if there's
Yeah, but I can only imagine the headache that would cause, because there are people that get headaches, the simulation sickness, from low or variable FPS. And that's also a big problem, is that if your FPS is 30 FPS, and it suddenly dips down to 20, that is very noticeable.
I'd notice that in a heartbeat. So I don't think that 30 is as bad as it gets to be made out to be. But I definitely don't think that it's... I mean, it's definitely not the better way to go. I mean, objectively, the more FPS you get, the better. And there's a number of reasons for that, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, well, there are people that drank the Kool-Aid so much that they're saying that 60 FPS is objectively worse than 30 FPS. It's sad, really, but I will say that I think that they need to try to shoot for for a steady FPS.
Right.
And that's a big problem with a lot of consoles nowadays, is that even going 720p 30 FPS or whatever resolution some of these games are running in, 900p 30 FPS, they are just not hitting a solid FPS. And that is where a lot of the debate comes from, is that they're running at this lower FPS and they're still not able to keep a solid frame rate. There's such a push on the visual medium, on the visual side of the medium, I should say, that the consoles just can't keep up. And the devs have to try to bullshit their way into why they're shooting for 723 30 FPS. And that's where the whole cinematic thing came in.
Right.
And there's some games out there that just do not work at 30 FPS. Trying to do a racing game at 30 FPS is just terrible.
Racing games, flying games, and fighting games really suffer the farther down your FPS goes.
Yeah, and fighting games need to have a solid FPS, because a lot of that is frame timing. Just having a very, very tight moveset down to the frame. It's if you've ever watched some of these high-level fighting game players play, it is just absurd, because they have practiced so much that they have the timing down to the second, but the frame of the animations.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of these fighting games, sure, they look good, but they're not as good as some of the other games out there, because they have to go for this rock-solid FPS.
Right. So 30 would be less ideal for those types of games, but I mean, if it's 30 solid versus a variable, say, I don't know, 40 to 60, honestly, I would say go for the solid 30, because you need consistency in those games.
Agreed.
How much can you tell the difference in frame rates? I know we've had a little bit of a conversation about this before, but
I think it really depends on the game type. Something with a lot of movement, it's a lot easier for me to tell. Like a racing game, for example, I could see the track going by a lot easier. But if it's just a platformer, depending on the amount of movement in the platformer, I sometimes have trouble telling. Especially if it's just, the obstacle type platformer where you don't really have a lot of enemies on the screen, and it's just the character bouncing around. If that character's not moving very quickly, and it's just a slower platformer, I have trouble telling if it's 30 FPS or not without a FPS counter on screen. Which it just may be my age or me being a little bit more lenient on FPS.
I'm the exact opposite. I can tell whenever I drop. Well, I guess it kind of depends on your monitor refresh rate. But
this is starting out and being rock solid at that FPS. I'm not talking about variable frame rate.
Right. No, I can tell the difference.
Variable frame rate, it's a lot easier to tell.
Yeah. I can easily tell the difference at the 30 to 60 level. I mean, that's obvious. 60 to 90, I mean, it depends a little bit on your refresh rate, but 60 to 90, I can also tell pretty easily.
I wouldn't be able to tell at all because my monitor is a 60 hertz monitor, so there'd be absolutely no difference on my monitor.
Yeah. My old monitor was 60 hertz.
would be response time in the controls.
My new monitor.
Which you start getting into the milliseconds of difference.
Right. My new
30 to 60 is a pretty big jump in response time. 60 to 90, not nearly as much. At least to my perception. But remember, I'm also old.
Yeah, I can easily tell the difference between 30 and 60 and 90. But the jump from 90 to 144 is much more subtle. So I can tell the difference if I stare at it long enough. But just right off the cuff, I can't tell.
Yeah, this is why I made the caveat that for a slower platformer game, it's a lot harder for me to tell. Is that there's not enough movement.
Right.
It all depends on the movement, obviously.
Yeah.
If I'm playing Civ, I probably couldn't tell you the frame rate.
I can tell you. I can tell you the difference easily. Also, I can tell the difference in Hearthstone. Hearthstone plays a lot better at 60 FPS than 30 FPS, which sounds weird because it's just a card game. But there's a real difference in the animation style that you can very clearly see at 30 versus 60 FPS. I mean, Hearthstone just plays a lot more crisply. And that's just a card game.
Well, there's also Blizzard went out of their way to make Hearthstone very stylish.
Hearthstone is very stylish.
Because a lot of card games before it were very static and there wasn't a lot of animations. It was literally almost like you were sitting at a table. While Hearthstone feels like a computer game about cards instead of a... that's not the best way to put it, but it's like the old ones were a computer game about cards, but a Hearthstone is a computerized card game.
Right.
If that makes any sense whatsoever.
No, that makes sense. There's a ton of movement. Like, all of your cards move around.
And there's also
screen.
a lot of things in Hearthstone that you really couldn't do in a regular card game.
Yeah, there's a lot of animations.
Just the RNG elements alone are just no way to do that on a physical version of that game.
Well, there could be a way to do it, but it would require way too much time and like memory to go about doing it. Because, rolling dice and flipping coins and all that jazz has existed in card games for a long time. But
yeah, I'm talking about things like copying your opponent's card from their hand and have the mystery element of what card was chosen.
Yeah, that's true. Things like that, there's no way you could do.
That would be very difficult to do without a lot of trust in your opponent.
Oh.
Or even, can you imagine trying to summon a random 3-cost minion? How long that would take?
Oh man, that would be so hard. Because, there's tons of different minions at the different costs. But we're getting a little bit off topic.
Yeah.
But so, even a game like Hearthstone, there's a big difference in playing it between 30 and 60 FPS. And the reason that 60 FPS is objectively better, the biggest reason is response time.
Yeah, which I went into a little bit.
Yeah, the way that works is at least the only way I've ever known it to work. There might be a different way. But there are things that you hard code to the frame rate. And there's some good things to do with that and some bad things to do with that. And one of the most common things that's coded to frame rate, probably exclusively to the best of my knowledge, is controller input checks. So if you've got a 30 FPS game, that means 30 times a second the game is asking what your controller or whatever your control input is doing. If you've got 60 FPS, that means you're getting 60 times a second the game is asking you what your controller is doing, which makes games noticeably control better. If you played, for example, Shadow of Mordor on the console, which is hard locked to 30 FPS, and it sometimes can't even hit that, your character feels very floaty. This is one of the few games that I've played both on console and on PC. But it's tolerable, but there's a noticeable lag between your commands, and it makes doing things like counters and blocking a little bit more difficult since they're pretty much all timed in that game. But then you go play it on the PC where you can have your frame rate as high as your computer can manage, but I've played it on 60 FPS. Everything's a lot more responsive and sticky. Like on the console, it feels like your character's floating around as you're doing attacks, whereas on the PC, it feels like you're actually sticking to the ground and not on ice or something like that. It's objectively better. And that's not even counting the fact that having more FPS means that you get a smoother experience that comes across your eyes. I feel like that's a weird way to say it, but I can't think of a better way to say it. The more times your monitor refreshes, the less natural motion blur or interpolation that your brain has to do to put the images together happens. That sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the less of a gap there is between each frame, the easier time your brain has making it into a moving picture.
And one of the bad things to lock to frame rate is physics.
Oh, that's the worst to lock to frame rate.
Yeah, I'll never forget a video by Total Biscuit, and we talk about him a lot.
Yeah.
Which, now that I think about it, there's probably a news article that we should have talked about with Total Biscuit, but that's something that is a little bit personal.
Okay.
The fact that he had a video of one of the Need for Speed games, and I blank on which one, but it tied the physics to the FPS, and it hard-coded the FPS to 30. And if you uncap the frame rate with a little bit of hackery, the game ran at double, triple, or quadruple speed.
And that's bad for any game, but in a racing game, it's especially bad. Because, I mean, if you, for example, double the speed, you'll be going from 120 miles an hour to 240 miles an hour. And that doesn't work out so well.
Essentially. And also, any FPS bumps could really throw up the physics.
Right, and could cause really weird errors and crashes and weird things to happen in game.
Make your car suddenly flip upside down for no apparent reason.
Or like float through the air or fall through the ground.
I will say that, at least for now, 144, I think it is, FPS.
Yeah.
Is an enthusiast level of FPS right now. It won't be forever. I'm not taking the 8 megabytes of memory is all you'll ever need approach.
Yeah.
Because that is just infamous, and there is no such thing as never in tech.
Nope.
It's a steady progression. So eventually, 144 FPS will be the gold standard, and 60 FPS will be looked at like 30 FPS these days. But for now, I don't think 144 FPS is anything but the enthusiast level. And there's actually not a lot of games out there that you could run without some really high-end hardware, at least the modern games. And even older games, they tend to cap out around 90.
Right. Yeah, making 144 FPS work usually requires either you have to have a top-end graphics card like a GTX 970 or a 980, or you have to sacrifice the way that your game actually looks graphically.
Yeah, which kind of is counterintuitive if you're doing it for fluidity of movement.
Right. The either part was either you have to run a multi-graphics card setup, so SLI, or really cut back on your graphical fidelity.
Which, honestly, some games even run worse when SLI is turned on.
Yeah, SLI's, I mean, it's not like super new, but it's a relatively new trend that is becoming more and more common, and a lot of games just don't support it properly.
Well, mostly because it requires some specialized stuff on the PC side, and unfortunately, PC is still treated rather badly by a lot of developers out there, even though it is I want to say the larger side of things, but you don't have the initial surge of sales with PC. PC is the long tail approach.
Right.
Where you're going to have the big launch weekend for certain games like your Fallouts, even though the honeymoon for Fallout's really gone away, but that's another story.
Right.
You're going to have big sales with certain games, but for a lot of games, you're going to have a long period of high sales. Like, well, let's pull Skyrim, for example.
Oh.
It's still up there in sales years after it's released.
There was a news article, actually, that I saw today, might have been yesterday, that said for the first time since its release, Skyrim dropped off of was it the top 10 or the top... Like,
probably top 10 if it's the top sellers.
It had finally slid off of the top list after almost 5 years.
Which is just ridiculous when you think about it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm looking for Skyrim on the top sellers now. Actually, there are a couple of new games on here that I don't recognize. Come on, Steam. There we go. I don't see it in the top 20. Maybe that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, it had like slid off of their whatever their top list
Or
was.
sorry, top 25. The first page of the top sellers.
Yeah, it had finally slid off of the first page. Which, I mean, is ridiculous how many copies that game has sold on Steam.
I don't even see it on the second page now.
Okay. Maybe it's fallen down a little bit farther than what I thought the article said, but they were just like, it's been, 5 years basically, and the game has still been in the top charts.
I found it on the third page.
So it's what, 50 something?
Yeah, they're about actually around the 60s. Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. Care to guess the game that's beating it just barely?
Evolve?
No, no, that'd be hilarious.
Is Fallout 4 just barely beating it?
No, Fallout 4 is still on the first page. What are you talking about?
Oh, okay. Well, you said it was kind of funny. I was thinking that would be kind of funny.
Well, it's a game that you are very well known for.
Eve?
No, not Eve. The other game you're very well known for.
Kerbal Space Program.
Yep.
Fancy. Way to go, Kerbal. You're beating Skyrim. That's an achievement. Do you think that... Oh, well, what do you think should be the standard FPS?
I think for 95% of games out there, 60 FPS. There are outliners out there that 30 FPS is okay. It wouldn't kill you. But it's when devs are talking about their vision and trying to just come up with excuses, let's put it that way, to mask just how underpowered the consoles are. And remember, send your hate mail to... Okay, I won't say it again, but I imagine that I would get a little bit of hate mail for that, just because the consoles are underpowered for the games that are trying to be pushed out. So the developers and the publishers are trying to come up with some PR speech to explain why that is. And it started really with the last console generation, when games started to outstep the boundaries of that tech. That they were trying to make games too pretty for decade-old hardware. Actually, more than a decade-old hardware if you count all the research and development time as well.
Yeah.
But they were trying to figure out a way, and calling the game cinematic when, because films run at 30 FPS, sure, right.
Films actually run at 24 FPS.
I wonder what a game dev would do if they put out a game that's running at 24 FPS.
Who knows?
Other than probably get torn apart by a lot of players.
Yeah. Then again, the only way that I could see that frame rate working is if it was truly a cinematic experience. Like, not what they like to call them, but a real cinematic experience that stuck to real-world filming techniques and cinematography to make some kind of maybe partially interactive cinematic experience.
I agree with you there. There's no way a game dev could do a real game at 24 FPS without being at some sort of parity or something.
Well, that wouldn't work anyways because of refresh rates. Refresh rates are in steps of 15. 24 FPS is not a step of 15. Some monitors can do, if you turn off like VSync, then you can get whatever you want. But with VSync on, you're locked to steps of... It might be 10, but it definitely used to be 15.
No, it has to be 15. 144. 144 is a step of 15.
Yeah.
I checked it while you were talking. Actually, 154 isn't a step of 15. It's a step of 9. Which
that may be something
does work for the others.
But, I mean, regardless, 24 still is not a
Actually,
step
no, it
above.
doesn't. What is frame rates a step of?
I don't know. I've only ever seen 15 and then the weird 144, which is, I always just assumed that there was some kind of tech limit to going past that reliably, but I could be wrong. Research.
Or it could just be some sort of weird arbitrary thing that they picked.
Yeah, that seems pretty likely, honestly. But I'm actually struggling.
Now I'm quickly searching at 144 hertz.
You can search that while I talk about my standard dilemma. I want to say that the ideal, like, minimum standard is 60 FPS. But honestly, I would be pretty happy if every game that they released, which mostly I'm looking at you console developers, ran at a steady 30 FPS. And I'm not saying that to give them any leeway or slack. Just honestly, they need to be able to meet that standard. Like, that's the bottom of the barrel, unless you're doing some kind of weird artsy thing. That's the bottom of what you can do. And if you can't meet that, then I don't think that you should actually be releasing your game.
Okay, I found why 144 FPS, at least someone's speculating.
Okay. Speculate.
It's the next multiple above 120, which is still kind of an enthusiast level, in my opinion. We completely skipped 120 FPS, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's basically the next divisible above 120 that's divisible by 24. And it's more for 3D effects.
Okay. I think 90 is an enthusiast build. Because unless you've got a top-end graphics card, you run into the same problem of trying to hit your 144 hertz. It's like, well, I either have to invest in better hardware or start cutting down my graphical fidelity.
Yeah, I think a lot of problem with FPS in general, at least on the PC side, where the FPS debate really is going like crazy, just because developers are trying to pass their BS reasons, is that the games just aren't optimized that well these days.
I don't know.
They're not optimized enough. They're trying to push the graphical fidelity and pushing their hardware requirements through the roof as a result.
Actually, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think the consoles are better optimized for than a lot of PC games. I think they're better optimized for than a lot of people give them credit.
I'm saying that the PC games are not optimized for.
Yeah. I do agree that developers are trying to push the limits too much. They either need to take a step back on their graphical fidelity or take a step back on the actual complexity of the games.
Maybe they'll sell a peripheral towards the end of the console lifespan where you hook two Xboxes together and
run it like SLI.
Yeah. Of course, it would require 2 copies of the game because,
Yeah. Of course it would. But, yeah, I think that we'll continue to see improvement on the consoles. One, we're already seeing some improvements, even though it doesn't seem that way. It's just everyone wants to talk about the biggest disasters. But in general...
Yeah, the ordered 1884, was it? Or
1886.
1886, yeah.
But
that was close enough.
We are seeing some general improvements, both as a result of companies freeing up some of the processing power of the consoles. Like with Xbox ditching the Kinect, and if you use your Kinect, they scaled back how much it's actually running to squeeze out some extra processing power. So between that happening and then the fact that the developers actually are getting better at producing games for the current hardware set, I think we will see some improvements, just like what happened at the end of the last console cycle. But it's still not going to be enough to hit the targets that they're trying to achieve. But I would be happy enough on console if they could guarantee that all games ran at 30 FPS, and then whatever else they wanted to do. I would be more than willing to play a game at 720p 30 FPS on console just to get the guaranteed 30 FPS. I feel kind of dirty saying that too, but it's true. One of the reasons I don't enjoy console gaming as much anymore is that they can't even make the games run properly. I'd be willing to take a hit in all respects just to get games that ran properly.
Yeah, there was the infamous side-by-side comparison of FPS for Fallout 4 where the Xbox One froze a couple times.
Yeah, FPS the Xbox One version would regularly drop to 0 FPS as it tried to catch up to what was going on. So
yeah, I hope that as the console generation goes on, that the developers get more used to the console architecture and are able to squeeze out a bit more oomph from these machines. But I do have to wonder how much is there, because this is an x86 processor, isn't it?
No, so, they're both 64-bit architectures.
Well, I'm trying to think of. I'm completely blanking. They're the closest to a computer that they've ever been.
Yeah, they're really close.
And I can't remember if it was x86 architecture, but it was still 64-bit, or if there was something else going on that essentially made it like programming for a computer, only with a few changes.
I know that the Xbox 360 ran a standard x86 architecture, but I'm pretty positive that the Xbox One is a full 64-bit OS and everything. It's got more than 4 gigs of RAM, so they'd have to be doing some kind of 64-bit at least. Now, Sony...
Xbox One is built around an x86 64-bit unstructured set. Thank you.
Now, Sony's got a custom-designed OS. I have no idea what's going on with them, but, I mean, they have everything.
And would you look at that? Sony has an AMD accelerated processing unit APU built around an x86 64-bit architecture. And silence.
My brain just totally went blank. I was gonna say something in response.
Sorry.
Nah, it's okay. It probably.
I was vindicating myself here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. I just.
I was cutting off the emails before they came in.
Right.
Because I was right on that. It was just a 64-bit version of x86, so I'm still wondering just how much trickery they can find in these consoles.
I don't know. Both consoles have still got a bit to give. I know that. As much as it would suck for the actual people out there who like Kinect, guaranteeing that Kinect would no longer be connected to Xbox would give it a bit more power. Not much, but a bit. There might be some little coding coding shortcuts that they can find that would give them a little bit more power for both consoles.
Just make the guns bigger.
Yeah. That would be...
I'm not joking. That actually is a programming trick. You increase the model of the guns, and anything that's behind the gun is not rendered. So it saves some computing power. That's why on some console games, you have these absolutely massive guns. It's not style-wise. It's partly style, but it's also trying to save some computing power.
Yeah, Evolve used that trick.
Evolve, our whipping boy.
Which we have pretty much decided is being replaced by Battlefront.
Yeah, just because of some of the things that are going on there. Actually, we could swap them out. I mean, we don't want to whip on one too much and kill it.
Fair.
Just because it's busy killing itself. On both fronts, at least on PC, Battlefront is sub 2,000 players, which sounds like a lot, but for a 40-player match, not nearly that much.
No. Let's do some quick math here. Let's just
125 full games.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, I did the math earlier.
There you go. That's terrible. Not good at all.
Which let's call it more like 200. Just because of half full games and split between game modes.
Right. That's still pretty bad though.
Can't wait for EA to drop support of the PC version.
Not until after the DLC comes out.
And then they'll shut down the servers.
Yeah. We are now going to a peer-to-peer system. Because that makes everybody happy.
That would work so well in a 40-player FPS or 40-player FPS. Yeah.
It definitely would work better than dedicated servers. That's for sure.
I mean, why do you need dedicated servers and mod support?
I don't know. All that just seems like a waste to me.
But we're off topic once again.
Yeah, and just in case you're wondering, that was sarcasm.
Remember, send your hate mail to vglpodcast@gmail.com.
And speaking of vglpodcast@gmail.com, unless you have anything else to say, I think we're ready to move on to our vast supply of letters sent in by the community this week.
Yeah, we actually have killed the crickets completely now.
Yep, we've got 3. Is that correct? With one of them being audio?
Yep. Yeah, we have an audio letter and 2 regular letters.
All right. Do you want to start with the audio?
Yeah, let's go ahead and kick off the audio letter.
All right, let's listen to the audio letter.
Greetings everybody, Chris here again, except it's not the host messed up, that's not the username I actually go by. You know, the whole reason I compared it to chemist is that it's pronounced about the same name, just with the E missing. I'm used to people mispronouncing it. If you can call not knowing how to pronounce a made-up jumble of letters just that, but you're sure the first one to throw an R in there. Way to disregard your top 1 contributor, guys. Now onto the topic I wanted to share about. I'm really grateful for the insightful discussion about piracy. I find many stray away from it, perhaps afraid to be seen supporting it, seeing it as something inherently evil. I myself find that most of the problems can be solved with the metric, does this instance of piracy actually diminish profits of the content creator? This pretty much ends the dilemma around pirating games that are unavailable to you for reasons you have no power over or you've already paid for, such as cracking annoying DRM or emulating old games. And it doesn't just apply to games. Do you have plenty of books but would rather read them on Kindle because you find it more convenient? Go for it. Do you want to watch some TV series but you can't get Netflix in your region? Not like you can do anything about it. As I've already mentioned, many, usually those profiting from the industry, seem to think that every pirated copy directly relates to sale loss, making the discussion inherently flawed. The assumption is that the person who torrented the game will not buy it, but would, were it impossible to get otherwise. I'm not going to say that's not always the situation, but that's just a fraction of all cases. More prevalent, in my opinion, are those who never buy games, regardless of their availability, on torrent sites. I would know I used to be that person. A teenager with next to no disposable income, a single game would be equivalent of 4 to 6 months of my pocket money, all of which I'd spent on hardware upgrades anyway. I don't want to get into that discussion whether if you're not going to buy something should you get it for free, because I'd much rather move to a much more important point. The very first game I bought was Rayman Legends. I torrented it shortly after release without the thought of purchase even crossing my mind. Still, I loved it so much that I looked it up on a local game store and bought it. Then I went home and couldn't play it because even though it installed from a disk, the DRM required online activation and my internet was down for a day. Go figure. Now my Steam library consists mostly of games I've already played or even finished on pirated copies back in the past. That's how I know they're worth my money. I still use torrent sites for demoing purposes to find out whether the game is any good, whether it runs well on my low-end laptop, and whether it supports certain features such as direct input controllers, stuff that's more and more infrequent and is hard to find information about. I'm in the third category now. I buy games because I can pirate them. Beware of the male crickets, Smith.
So that was not Chris there that we just listened to. There we go. That'll be a good enough lead back in.
Okay.
Also, if you're unhappy with us calling you not Chris, let us know. We don't want to lose any fans at this stage, so we'll not call you not Chris. Anyways, so he was talking a lot about forgive us.
See, I can say it properly.
Please forgive us, for we have sinned.
Actually, it's me. But Jared's just as guilty because he didn't correct me.
That's true. I didn't correct you.
And he was looking at the letter.
I was doing that. Didn't correct you. You had it. You had it under control. So you were responding to us about our piracy discussion. A lot of good points you made there, honestly. The only thing that I really have anything to say on, and at least unless Rage gives me something else to go on, You mentioned that companies consider piracy a lost sale in all cases.
Yeah, the lost sale fallacy. That's what I was about to jump on.
Yeah. If someone who is pirating everything and they don't ever purchase anything, that's not a lost sale. They weren't going to buy it anyways. At worst, it's just annoying. I mean, that's like saying you lost a sale because someone who's a shoplifter stole some stuff from your store. I mean, it sucks that you lost that, and at least in the physical realm, if someone actually steals a product, that means that it's going to cost you to replace it and things like that.
Yeah,
but
that is more technically a lost sale just because it's physically removing the item from the store. But pirates aren't... Pirates aren't usually grabbing physical goods. The pre-release stuff, that actually kind of falls in line with that, but that's more employees in the stores getting the games early.
Right.
But it's not really costing them anything. There's a phrase that a lot of game devs have come to use. It's leaving money on the table, which is also another big problem in gaming, that they see everything that they put out as something that has to cost something. And they look at everything in a cost-benefit analysis, and that's maybe actually why, coming all the way back to Mortal Kombat, why we're losing the XL version.
Yeah. Which I still think that that's really crappy, but since you've said that, if at the very least they gave the netcode updates and stuff like that, it would be more bearable. It'd still suck, but it'd be more bearable.
But everything has become a cost-benefit analysis, and piracy has come under that flag just because game devs, well, I shouldn't say game devs. Game devs are usually not the ones that are part of this unless it's a self-published game. The publishers are the ones that are just lording over these game devs and are trying to push out these asinine DLC packs and everything else, and it's just kind of gone nuts.
Yeah. And stuff like that makes me feel more like pirating a game. It just gives me this feeling like, well, I feel like you're being, really crappy to your consumers, so I'm going to be really crappy to you.
Yeah, which we've talked about just reinforces the whole problem in that these devs, these publishers just see piracy as lost sales, and they'll see a game on Pirate Bay get several million downloads and think, oh, we lost several million downloads on the PC side because they pirated it all. And for a long time, the PC was seen as the platform that pirates all their games and doesn't buy them. Because I definitely don't have 900 games in my Steam library.
Yeah, I don't have, 350, 375? I don't have that many games in my Steam library either.
It's just this mindset that has to be broken, which is probably a bad term to use with mindset, but...
No, I get what you're saying, no. It's not consumer friendly because DRM causes more problems than it solves.
Yeah, there was another story that just came out just before we recorded about some DRM that's going to be in Tomb Raider Rises, which may be a topic for next week.
Sure. I was thinking you were going to say the group of hackers or pirates or whatever that were saying that some game was too difficult to hack the DRM.
It was Just Cause 3. It's actually the same DRM as well.
Right, but they've since said that they were going to go back and work on it some more because they refused to admit defeat.
Yeah, that was actually a topic that that I took off the table at one point when we talked about piracy in general.
We'll see about putting that in next week's show. But now, unless you have anything further to say to not Chris...
Well, I will say that I completely agree with you on the Rayman thing. It just... it's a DRM problem. Our Lord and Savior, Gabe Newell, and no, I'm not mispronouncing Savior, talked about piracy as, well, I disagree with him on one part of this. He said that it's not a price problem, it's a service problem, and I think it's both.
Yeah, I agree.
The piracy for you was the service problem, that you didn't have the internet to do the online authentication, so you had to pirate the game.
Right.
And that's... I wish the game devs would just... I don't want to say let go of the subject, but just back off the subject a little bit to cool off a little. Because it's just become a debate that's gone on and on and on, and it's gone nowhere. And honestly, despite what that one hacking group says, piracy will always be around. It's how you address it.
Yeah.
There was it was Alan Wake. Have you ever played Alan Wake?
I love Alan Wake. So much fun.
If you played the hacked version of Alan Wake, the only thing it did to that game was Alan Wake had a pirate eye patch.
Which, to be honest, makes him way better.
Yeah. I mean, granted, there are games that do annoying things like... I think it was Arkham Asylum that made it where if the game was compromised in pretty much any way, Batman was no longer able to glide and made the game pretty much unbeatable.
Game dev...
Was it Arkham Asylum or was it... I know it was an Arkham game, of course.
I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't...
It may have been City, but I'm pretty sure it was Asylum. Because this was a pretty old thing.
Game Dev Tycoon, if you pirate it, it plays normally for a while, and then your games start getting pirated, and eventually 100% of your game sales become piracy, and you lose.
Yeah, which it makes it really sound like they're buying into the whole every single pirate is a lost sale, which is annoying.
Yeah.
I understand their cheeky little message, but at the same time, they're wrong.
Yeah.
But that's really all we have to say about piracy, again, unless it comes up again. Or, we also have that topic that may be next week.
Right.
Depending on how much news we have, because we are going very long.
Yeah, we're very long. We're at 2 hours and 45 minutes recording already.
I'm at 2:40 on the actual timer.
Right, so...
shall we go on?
Yes, let's go on before we... I don't know, this might be our first 3-hour show, but... Moving on. So the next one I have pulled up is a letter from Belug?
We'll go with that.
Belug. It says...
remember, send your hate mail to Jared at bglpodcast@gmail.com.
So Belug says, "Hi, a little suggestion for the episode descriptions. You could add the names of the games you talk about, since sometimes indie games have weird names and it's difficult to find the game."
Yeah, I will chime in on this real quick that if this is the same guy that sent me a tweet earlier, pretty much over the weekend, I think it was, asking about Cuphead. This was something I was going to bring up to Jared already, but since you emailed, I decided to not bring it up and let it be in the email itself.
Okay.
And I completely agree with you. We are still very new at this, and the suggestion is something that we should have been doing the entire time, and it slipped my mind, and I think it slipped Jared's as well.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it, to be honest. We are...
especially with indie games, and since I'm more indie leaning than Jared, there's some weird game names out there.
Yeah.
Some that are pretty much unsearchable unless you're looking for the very exact topic.
And this is something that we'll do going forward, and if one of us gets the time... I'm
not sure if we'll go back and do that, because that is... a lot of hours of podcast.
Yeah.
And we don't save the individual show notes.
No.
And our individual lists are something that we don't put in the show notes. Well, until now, because I'll paste my Steam sale into the show notes after this.
Yeah, I will. And then I've got mine here, and I'll be sure to paste them as well. The other thing, the rest of the letter, though, says, "In extra, I'd like to know what's your point of view on all the game jams that happen I think this is supposed to say every year, and their impact on the gaming ecosystem. Plus, what do you think of the concept of," and there's a link to...
The public domain jam.
Right.
Oh, we'll just call it that.
And should there be... Plus, do you think the concept of open domain jam should be more used in other competitions? I think that first of all, the game jams are really cool, and they're actually very helpful. I mean, there's different game jams that are done in different ways, but
Yeah, there's so many game jams out there.
there are, I mean, one, they're really good at helping push developers to improve their skills because of either like the time constraints or the actual like development constraints. Like you can only make a game that's this, this big in terms of like the amount of space that you can use. Like, for example, you have to make a game that's only 10 megabytes. I think those are really good at pushing developer skills. And there's a lot of really interesting, neat ideas that come out of those game jams. There's been quite a few small indie titles that have been spawned from the aftermath of the game jam. Either the dev...
I was going to chime in with one I know of off the top of my head. This was a self-imposed game jam, but Binding of Isaac was essentially a game jam game.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a huge phenomenon. But, either because the developer continues the project in their own time, or maybe even the game is good enough to go straight to market, in essence. I think they're a really good thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the podcast I heard it from. I'm wanting to say something like Star Talk or Astronomy Cast or something along those lines. One of the more science-based podcasts I listened to that talked about engineers. If you give an engineer unlimited budget and just let them go nuts, you'll get something decent, but it won't be genius. Where the genius in engineering comes from, and I agree with this on writing and game design as well, is when you impose constraints. Now, I won't say 30 FPS is a constraint that should be put on, by the way, before that gets out there.
Right.
But having a theme to work with, having a time constraint to work with, pushes the development of these games a lot more than just having it be a pet project that you work on and off for 2 or 3 years.
I mean,
Not saying that a pet project would not be as good as a game jam game that has its initial development in a weekend, but it gives it that push.
Yeah. I mean, it encourages outside the box thinking, be that in terms of creativity or ways to circumvent certain issues with constraints, like, coding tricks and things like that. And it's just really good at building a person's skills and their creative thinking and problem-solving skills and all those sorts of things that really come into play.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by the public domain jam, though.
Yeah, I'm looking at this.
I looked at it as well, and I'm not seeing anything too different from most game jams. I am seeing the different categories. Is that what you mean? Because I don't see a lot of game jams judge on individual categories like that, like graphics, sound design, polish. So I'm not sure if you mean that.
The only thing I can think of about public domain jam... here we go. Public domain are things that anybody can use without needing to get licensing for them. One thing that I can think of is that maybe you have to design a game based entirely around things that you couldn't get a license for. And that might just be part of the restriction.
Yeah, I wish you would have put what exactly you're talking about on this. There's a lot of games out there that use stuff from the public domain. Any Lovecraftian game out there, that's public domain.
I'm reading through this, and it seems to be like they want to encourage creativity by getting away from kind of the standard game things. And it looks like you can use anything that's in public domain, and they encourage you to think outside the box. Because like throughout this, as I'm just skimming it, it's
just still a lot of game jams out there, so I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about on this.
Yeah. Feel free to...
sorry, we are once again confused, messing up.
Feel free to write back in and tell us exactly what you mean. I mean, any kind of game jam out there, I think, should be done more. I'm 100% in support of every game jam that I've ever seen. And if my thinking on the public domain jam if my thinking is correct, then yeah, I mean, definitely that should be used more either more competitions designed around that fact, or is perhaps an extra set of rules to further foster creativity and outside the box thinking. I mean, absolutely, I think that's a great idea. But yeah, if we missed the gist of it, feel free to write back in and be like, hey, you guys totally screwed this up. Here's the real answer. Or you could be like, yeah, you were awesome and you figured it out.
And you pronounced my name correctly for once.
Yep. Do you want to read the one from Aki, or do you want me to read it?
I'll read it.
Okay.
And I won't do an accent. Even though I am very tempted at kinesis. Hey, gents. As you mentioned in the previous episode, gaming has overtaken the film industry in terms of money. There's also been a push in gaming to be broadcasted on mainstream television and radio in the form of recognized sports and competitions. And thanks to platforms like YouTube and Twitch, individuals can make a very comfortable living from gaming. However, the game industry is struggling to find acceptance in general, mostly older, it would seem, population. People seem to shrug off as a phrase of technical evolution that will blow over in time. Although it will always have a fan base, most people see it as something that will always linger in the background but will never catch on. When my father visited my house for the first time, he looked at my studio, which I use for streaming and podcasting, and just laughed and shook his head. In that moment, I knew he would never take me seriously when it comes to my gaming. What do you guys think? Do you think gaming, and when I say gaming, I mean anything to do with games on Twitch, YouTube, PAX, podcasting, blogs, competitions, etc., is here to stay and will grow with the younger generations? Or do you think it will remain niche and has been, why is that so hard to say? As had been suggested. What are your thoughts on gaming being recognized and commentated as a sport? Well, we'll stop right there and say, I think that it will grow.
Yeah.
It is a problem with the older generation. I've heard this from somewhere. Yes, I'm parroting another podcast again, and I'm blanking on where it's from again. But I heard the analogy of saying video games is like rock and roll. It's the younger generation and the older generation initially tried to repress it because they didn't understand. They saw it as an evil. And you saw that with video games in the 90s. And even today, they're saying that video games make us killers. They're saying that video games make us slovenly, which, okay, may be a little true with some people. But they're saying that video games are an evil and must be controlled. They must be regulated. It's the new evil. And it was the same with rock and roll. And it eventually gained pretty much full acceptance when the younger generation came to be in power. And I think it will be the same with gaming.
I don't exactly know where I want to go with this, so I'm just going to start talking.
That never stopped you before.
Very true. I don't think that the gaming industry is struggling to find acceptance anymore. The older population does still lack understanding, but the median age for gamers is somewhere in like mid to late 30s. And then when you break that down by population, 40 to 50-year-old women is actually the top gaming demographic.
With things like Candy Crush, right?
Yeah, with a lot of mobile games, and then things like little searching games or whatever, the hidden object games. There we go. So I don't think that gaming is really lacking in acceptance from anyone except the oldest populations.
I'll tell you where this. I don't want to call it a fallacy but I think part of the problem is that mainstream media is still controlled by old people.
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. I also
remember when the Mass Effect games were coming out and they were talking about full frontal nudity
and that
in
they
these
were
games.
Sex simulators.
Yeah, and when you play these games, you realize that they have no idea what they're talking about.
Nope.
They look at these games, and I don't want to say that they're making this up because I don't think they're that dishonest, even though, well, there are a couple news agencies that I think are that dishonest, but that's completely beside the point.
Fox News.
You said it, not me. Even though I was thinking it.
But I think that
well,
I think it's a combination of lack of understanding and fear. I mean,
fear is a big
the
one.
video game industry is the most profitable entertainment industry in the world. It's quite, it's really surpassed like the film industry. Difficult to say on the music industry, but in terms of that, I mean, video games are up there at the top. And all of these old agencies that don't understand how it works are scared of it because they see the world changing and they don't want it to change. For one, they don't want to give up their power, and for two, they don't want to give up their money. And so I think that that's where all of this non-acceptance rhetoric comes from, because gaming is huge. Between the money... I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, between all the money that it makes and the fact that now gaming is a part of the mainstream, you see celebrities play games and openly endorse them. And, I mean, all kinds of celebrities, musicians, actors, sports people, pro wrestlers, that sort of thing. I mean, on the next Co-optional podcast, the one that's recording, I think, tomorrow, Total Biscuit has got a wrestler on who is also a gamer and runs a gaming channel. I don't know anything about wrestling, so I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but I mean, gaming is becoming very mainstream. It's already extremely mainstream, and that's only going to continue to grow. It reminds me of the quote that's used to describe new ideas in science. I don't exactly remember how it goes, but to paraphrase it, something on the lines of, a new scientific theory doesn't grow because you convince the other people in your field that you're right or that it's correct. It grows when they die, and no one's around to argue with it anymore.
Dude, that's his dad. Sorry.
That could come across extremely mean. I realize that now, but that's not exactly how I meant it. But, my dad... I
can't help myself.
I mean, my dad does the exact same thing to me. Every time he comes over and sees, like, my setup here, or every time I talk about it, he's like, oh, when you grow up, you'll finally stop playing video games. And, I mean, that makes me want to strangle him for a number of reasons, but... he just doesn't get it. He's an old guy who doesn't, he thinks video games are just a toy for kids.
Yeah. Can you imagine what he would say if he found out that the top person on YouTube, how much money he was making and what he was doing to make that money?
Oh, man. PewDiePie makes so much money. It's ridiculous.
If you wanted to make the big YouTube dollars, just record him watching any PewDiePie video.
Yeah. That would be interesting, although I can't stand PewDiePie. I mean, like, I have a lot of respect for him as a businessman, as a successful person. Like, I don't mean like I hate him. It's just like...
outside the persona, he doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, but his persona, I can't stand it. Let's see. What else are we missing?
He talked about esports. And I do think esports is going to grow as well. And there's one reason for this. And it's a one-word reason.
Money?
No. Poker.
Oh, yeah. Poker is the least athletic sport. And I'm using quotation marks for sport that's out there. I mean, I love to watch poker, but by no means would I consider that a sport. I think that there's a lot more athleticism displayed in esports competitions than there is in poker.
And poker has, over the years, slowly gained acceptance to be a sport that is routinely seen on TV. I don't think he'll commentate poker on the radio. But then again, that's also mostly because radio is a little dead, at least here.
Yeah, and I don't think radio
Traditional
would work.
radio, I should say.
I don't think radio would work for video games either. You can get away with commenting about baseball or whatever, because basically it's like, what's the score? And, oh my gosh, that was an amazing play. But video games are a visual medium.
Yeah, the reason why it works for baseball and it wouldn't work for, let's say, Dota, is the rule set. The rule set for baseball is very, very simple.
It is. You
get the rule set explained to you for baseball in, let's say, 5 minutes, and that's being pretty inclusive for everything.
Yeah.
Including things like bunting and infield outs, that sort of thing. But to try to explain the rules of Dota to the point that it can be understood just being commentated, no visual input whatsoever, I don't think you could do it in a couple hours.
No.
especially whenever you had to go over all the different heroes and everything else.
Yeah, the only
just the hero. Can you imagine trying to do that for League of Legends?
Oh my
actually,
gosh,
with
no.
an even bigger hero pool.
the only way that would work is if someone had extensive knowledge of the game, and then you might
Which is
do
why
it.
I don't think it would work as a radio show.
Right.
They could show that on the screen and give a brief summary as a visual medium, but it wouldn't work as just audio. Now, there are some games that probably would work, but they're more along the sports line. I'd say maybe Hearthstone would work as a radio.
Maybe, but again, there's hundreds of different cards with different effects, so someone who doesn't have a decent amount of experience of the game is, if they hear the phrase, oh, someone's played a Yeti, that's a really good play made by them, going against a board of low damage minions. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like, what's a Yeti? What's a low damage minion seems kind of self-explanatory, but it's like, well, what's the Yeti? Why is that a good play? And right offhand, I can say, well, the Yeti's a good play because
but Hearthstone's also slow enough that could be slightly explained in, let's say, 30 seconds, because typically Hearthstone matches, especially professional ones, or professional ones, tournament level matches, they run the entire timer.
Yeah,
on
they'll
most
run
plays.
the timer out on every turn, like trying to figure out exactly what to do. But I guess I could explain that scenario in 30 seconds or less. If a Yeti is slightly above the power curve, and it's got more of a health balance, which makes it great for taking on low-cost minions that typically have 2 or 3 health and only 1 or 2 attack. It's boom. There you go. I just described it in like 15 seconds. So yeah, I guess that's possible, but it would require a lot of really boring rhetoric for anybody who knows the game.
Yeah, so I don't think it would work on the radio, but as the younger generation goes up, and these games are more well-known, maybe it could work on a radio-like or just audio, but it would still be niche. I think visual medium, YouTube, Twitch, that sort of thing would still be the big thing, or whatever replaces Twitch and YouTube, because I really don't think anything is forever. I mean, just look at MySpace.
Yeah, YouTube's lasted for a long time, though. I mean, I agree, they won't last forever, but they probably have got a few more years at least before they start to fade away.
Implode?
Yeah, implode. And then after he gets off that topic, he goes on.
Yeah, I'll finish off the letter now.
Okay.
And JR. Hey, who shot you, JR? Well, there's an old reference.
Yeah. Anyways.
This is overdue, but regards to my comment on EVE Online in episode 1 that drove the shrink crazy. Oh, sorry, he doesn't say that. He says of your podcast.
Yeah.
But it did drive you crazy for a while.
I actually spent a long time thinking about that, actually. But
I think I heard you say that it would take about 9 months to train all the skills in EVE. It would actually take years and years, but I may have misheard you and haven't gone back to check out if it was a mistake. Keep up the good work, guys. You provide a great insight to the larger gaming world, as long as it doesn't revolve around Zelda.
yeah, we really
Much
struggle on
love,
that one.
Aki. And I will plug his stream real quick before we talk about that. He streams on Twitch at Akinesis Gaming. You should be able to find him fairly easily. He mostly does Kerbal Space Program stuff.
We'll be sure to post a link to his Twitch channel in the description of this podcast if you want to go check him out.
Yeah, don't forget to add that to the show notes before we're done here.
Yeah. So about Eve, I honestly don't remember what I said. I feel
you said roughly that it would take you about 9 months to train everything. I'm not sure if you meant everything that you would need.
I feel this is what I meant. I may have not said it this way, or maybe I did, and I don't know. But what I meant was that it would take you about 9 months to train everything, or for me to train everything that would fully max out my character build. So all of the industrial stuff, all of the science stuff, and then all of the mining stuff would take me about 9 months to get through, if that's all I trained. That's what I meant. I'm not sure if that's what I said or not, and I probably won't go back and listen to it. But that's what I meant. I don't actually know how long it would take you to train through all the skills in the game. A long time, probably.
Well, I obviously don't because I only listen to Eve's stories. I don't play the game.
Yeah, I cherry pick the best bits to talk to you about every week.
And how many hours do you play to get those best bets?
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
But to be fair, you usually multitask.
I do usually multitask. Because, I mean, it doesn't require your full attention to mine materials and run trade runs in high security space. And I try not to autopilot through low security space anymore, now that I'm a member of a corporation.
And are constantly at war.
Yeah, constantly at war.
I was joking when I suggested be in the United States at one point.
Yeah. But
actually, let's do something. Ooh, you only have 372 hours.
Yeah, and it's getting harder for me to use the launcher excuse because I'm purposely getting better about turning it off. I left it on last night, but that's the first time I've left it running in the background. But I'm not actually playing in probably the past week, at least the last few days. So I'm up to about, I don't know, probably 75% of that is actual playtime, as opposed to 50%.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to schedule intervention.
Nah. Technically, it's more than that.
Or should I get the recliner ready for you?
Nah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I can stop at any time.
Yeah, you stopped several times this week.
Technically, it's more than that because I'm usually playing 2 clients at once. But
yeah, we're going to have to sign you up to Eve Anonymous.
Nah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
You're playing right now, aren't you?
No, I'm not actually. I was playing when we started, but I quickly turned it off because it's very hard to concentrate fully on anything when I play Eve. Like, on anything else.
This is probably the only time I get your full undivided attention.
I do play it when we stream now. Just mining away. But that's our last letter for this week.
Yeah, thank you, Acanemesis.
Thanks, everybody who sent one in. 3 is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm amazed.
I'd love to get 4 or more next week. But 3's good.
Technically, we did get 4, but...
Technically, but one of them was the...
one was a copy.
Yeah. So, now to move on to the last part of the show as we go over the 3-hour mark.
Oh, well over the 3-hour mark, actually. Well, this may not be the 3-hour mark after editing and everything.
Right, but it's the 3-hour mark in recording. So what games did you pick this week? I only did 2 this week. No cheating for me.
I did 2 as well, and didn't crap on anything this week.
I've got a positive and a negative.
Oh, always so negative.
I've been really positive the last couple times.
Well, one I haven't played, but it looks interesting.
Okay.
And it has some good reviews on it.
Okay.
So I'll do the one I haven't played first, just to get it out of the way, because I have a little bit of experience with the other one.
Okay.
It's a game called Hard West.
Oh, I think I know what game that is. Is that the one that's like a kind of a short-ish flash game experience where you have to figure out who it was that murdered your family?
No.
Okay. Never mind. I don't know what it is. Carry on.
Hard West is essentially XCOM in the Old West with demons.
I need this in my life right now.
It is a turn-based strategy game with elements of XCOM. As a matter of fact, it is on your wish list. I'm not sure if you just added it or not.
Nope. It was already on my wish list.
You have a problem.
I do have a problem with that. Yeah, I need this game in my life. Oh, I'm tempted to buy it
it's
right
now
now.
moving up the wish list.
But no, yeah, I'm just going to move it to the top of my wish list. Anyways, carry on.
Like I said, I haven't played it yet, but it is very positively rated at 83% out of 493 users, and it doesn't have a lot of joke reviews on the positive side. And it looks really interesting. And I was struggling to find a second game that I've played, so I picked the one that was on my wish list. I actually put this on my wish list when it first came out. Actually, not too long ago. This has actually gone pretty quickly on sale. It only went on sale November 18th of the last year, so. And we're in January, so it's only been out a couple months. and it's getting patched fairly frequently. It got patched during December to 1.3.
That's always...
But going down the game features real quick, it offers dynamic cover, allows you to create cover, and has the ability to ricochet off metal objects, your shots, to do like trick shots.
That sounds really, really interesting.
And it is an XCOM like experience. I'm not sure if they have the base building or not. I didn't dive that far into it because I do want to eventually play this.
Right.
But it has the whole occult feel. As a matter of fact, one of the screenshots has a pentagram with the cowboy standing in the middle of it. So I want to say more, it's like a Jonah Hex. As a matter of fact, the main character on the icon for Steam, when you look at it, has a very Jonah Hex look to him. Do you know who I'm talking about with Jonah Hex?
I don't know who Jonah Hex is. I was about to say, who is Jonah Hex?
A DC comic book character.
Okay, DC. I was a Marvel guy.
Yeah, basically bounty hunter, cursed by demons, if I recall correctly.
Well, it does sound pretty cool.
In the Old West. As a matter of fact, he has the same snarl that character has, where part of his face has kind of been eaten away.
Yeah, I see that in the image.
But a lot of positive reviews. The downside from I'm pulling from one review is that it's short-ish. It's 20-ish hours for single play, or for a single playthrough, no multiplayer, and no sandbox mode. But if you're playing a strategy game, you're typically looking for the experience.
Yeah, 20 hours isn't that bad,
especially at this price point.
Yeah.
It is priced normally at $19.99. It's 35% off, but it is a recent release, so the big sale isn't going to be there, which brings it down to $12.99 US for the standard edition. There is a collector's edition that has the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's not too expensive. I'm not a huge fan of getting soundtracks, but it's a good option for the people who are.
Okay, you're up.
Yep, my first game is the negative game. Glacier 3, The Meltdown. It is a car combat racing game. And it's...
dang it, you got my other game.
Did I really?
I'm joking.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure how you could call this positive, I guess.
It looks like it's cheap.
It's just bad. It's not worth 99 cents. It's really not. The graphics aren't very good. The frame rate is not stable. Everything just feels weak, if that makes any sense.
You're gonna hate me.
Huh?
It's in my library. I must have gotten it free somewhere because I don't remember this being in a bundle.
I actually bought it at one point.
Ooh, that's worse.
Yeah, and thankfully it was after the refund system, so I refunded it immediately. I mean, it didn't take very long to figure out the game was bad. But yeah, the car controls are not atrocious, but they're pretty bad. It doesn't actually have a real story mode. The multiplayer's dead because, it's a bad game. It's just, it feels like a cash grab for something. I don't know. Someone...
You'll be damned if you know what.
Yeah. It just feels like a cash grab. And there's no movie that I know of that's emulating or anything like that. It's just a bad game. It's only 99 cents. So if you really, really...
Go get a cup of coffee instead.
Yeah, go get a cup of coffee, bag of chips, pack of gum.
And let me guess, if you want to have the experience of this game, take the coffee and pour it in your lap.
Pretty much. It would be more entertaining to burn your dollar and just watch it burn. All right. Back to you.
Okay, my other game that I picked out is one that I've actually played, which gives it bonus points, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's called Tinertia. It is a jumpless platformer. No, don't turn off. Just the fact that I said it's a platformer. It is a rocket jumping platformer. You do not have a traditional jump button. Instead, you are rocket jumping the entire time.
Is that the one where you like jump from asteroid to asteroid in space?
No.
Okay,
Now, once again, you're thinking of a different game.
I am.
It's also a speed running platformer, so it has a lot of momentum to it. It's actually done really well and didn't sell all that well from the looks of the player base on it, which is really a shame. I will say it's not the greatest game put out there, and it's actually one of these weird platformers that plays better with a mouse and keyboard just because of the rocket jumping aspect. That a mouse and keyboard is not only faster, but because of the way they coded it, they set it up so that any input from the device that is controlling the rocket jumping triggers the rocket. So with a mouse, you could just shoot straight up a wall, but with a controller, you have this delay when clicking it. You're firing the rockets on a controller with the right analog stick, and it just has that delay.
Right.
And it could never match being the clicks.
Interesting. I think
I've played a couple levels of this, and the bosses are actually really interesting as well. It's a fun little game, and I'm not sure if I recommend picking it up for the price because it's still not hugely discounted. Once again, it has came out somewhat recently. It came out September 3rd. So it's still less than 6 months. I'm sorry.
I will. Well, I was gonna say I'll check it out. Actually, I like if a platformer's got a unique, like a truly unique thing. It makes me be a little bit interested. But platformers really suffer from an oversaturation of the market.
Yeah.
There's just
and at least
so
this isn't
many.
retro inspired.
That's very good. Retro inspired is like an immediate turnoff for me at this point
And
for any game.
And one thing you may notice is that looking at the game, it looks like a 2D platformer, but it's actually not. What it is the levels are basically climbing up this tower at least for the first couple of worlds, and I'm assuming that the rest of it. And at certain points of the level will actually bend around the tower, so you'll hit the end point, and the entire game will shift 90 degrees to get the new 2D plane. It's a cool little trick to add some variety to some levels.
Yeah, that's interesting. Didn't Fez do that?
Not quite to the level of Fez. Fez used it for more puzzle elements, and this is more just adding a bit of dimension to the levels to make it feel like you're climbing the tower instead of just having a set of levels that were interconnected. Or it made it feel like the levels are more connected than what they usually would.
I got you. Yeah.
Because if you go back to the level screen, you see, oh, that's where that bend was in the level. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the speedrunning aspect. And if you want to feel awesome, this doesn't have a huge community, so you can probably get pretty high on the leaderboards. And last time I played, it didn't look like there was a lot of dirty hackers on online leaderboards.
Well, that's good. I'm not a big leaderboard guy. I mean, I know there's people out there that totally are. It's just that's another thing that's not for me.
And it does have an awesome feeling of whenever you pull off just an insane series of jumps. Because it does have a lot of speed with it. It actually feels a lot faster than Super Meat Boy.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like you're out of control at any point. Which is very tough to do.
Yeah, Super Meat Boy's crazy. So.
Anyway, that's Tinertia. And I think I already gave the price.
Yeah, you did. So.
I think I gave the full price, but I didn't say with a discount. It's 40% off right now, which brings it down to $8.99 US.
Alrighty. Well, my other game that I recommend is Starpoint Gemini. Starpoint Gemini is, what's the best way to describe it? A single plane version of Freelancer. By that I mean is that you're locked to a plane, almost like you're flying on an ocean. But pretty much in every other way, it's a spiritual successor, to Freelancer. Even the devs, if you go look at their website, say that this game was inspired quite a bit by Freelancer. Now, there is a second one that's out. It's been out for a year or two now, and I have to say that Starpoint Gemini 2 is better than the original because it has a full range of 3D space that you can move in, and there's actually no loading screens. The second one is a continuous universe, whereas the first one functions more like each jump gate that you go through goes to a little map that you can, kind of like a little region that you can explore in space. The game is not perfect. This was this indie team's first game that they built. So there's some stuff they got wrong, but mostly it's a game they got right. It's got a very unique sci-fi story, which is really hard to do. It's got unique art, like a unique art style for a space sci-fi game, which again is something that's hard to do, but there's quite a lot of design variations between the different ships that you can get. The different companies that build them each have their own distinct design style. It looks really good. Probably the only two problems with it is, one, the voice acting is kind of bad. I mean, there's really no two ways about it. The main characters each have fine voice acting.
So it's exactly like Freelancer.
Yeah, it's exactly like Freelancer. The main characters have got pretty good voice acting, but kind of the NPC local space chatter and the characters that you can talk to for side missions, they're pretty bad. They don't have for this game, they didn't have a huge repertoire of voice talent to call upon. So they chose to spend the majority of their budget on the main voice cast, which, I mean, I don't disagree with that design choice. I'd rather have them have the better voices because you can turn the background chatter off. I said there were two problems. That was one. What's the other one?
Okay. I'm waiting.
Oh, the single plane actually can be quite annoying at times, because there's things that, like, ooh, that looks really interesting, and it's too far up or down in order to get to.
Oh, so just a tease.
Yeah, it's really just teasing you. But outside of those two things, the game is really well put together for an indie team. It's very stable. It's got a lot of depth to it. I'm not quite sure how long it would take you to get through the main story, because when I played it, I spent a lot of time, mining and trading and doing things that are not space combat, because that's what I do. But it's fun. Its normal price is, what does that say, $13.99. It's 80% off. It's $2.79.
Okay, quick question. Does it follow Freelancer in terms of its ending as not having one?
No, it has a pretty distinct ending. I mean, I'm not going to give away any spoilers.
One that you actually realize is an ending?
Yeah, you definitely know it's an ending. And I believe that there's two different endings. Not like a good and a bad ending, but kind of like oh, you were well prepared and you did all of the right things. And then I guess you weren't as prepared as you should have been.
You done fucked up.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's like a third ending that is you actually losing. But I got the best ending because I spent like all of my time doing other things. So
pretty sure that's when it crashes the desktop, which I did see a couple people reporting.
yeah, it's got a lot of negative reviews on Steam, which I don't understand. And unless they're, they had a unique circumstance, which, hardware conflicts and all of that jazz. Most of the complaints seem to be around the graphics and the sound, which, I can't fault them for disliking that. The graphics are quite dated, and then, like I said, the voice acting is pretty bad outside of the main characters. So I don't blame them for that, but I think that if you like Freelancer type games, if you like space games in general, I think this is one that you would enjoy. And the sequel fixes all of the problems of the original. So,
but it's not on sale.
It's not on sale right now, but if you do ever see it go on sale, it's much better. And I actually had a help in working on the second one. I had a hand in it. Back when I used to write game reviews, we got contacted by them to do an early look at the game before it released. And like this is really early, like several months out from the release date.
So wait, you were actually in a beta, not the game industry's delusion of a beta these days?
No, it was an actual beta, and like as part of the kind of.
They actually still do those?
They still do those. We were they sent it to a bunch of sites to do an actual beta test on, and they let us review it in the beta and give our thoughts about it. And after they did that, I got to talking to one of the devs, and we had a really long back and forth conversation about the game. And he was like, you've got some pretty good ideas. Would you mind helping us out a little bit? And so,
Did you at least get a credit?
yeah, I'm in the credits. Actually, it might be our old site is in the credits, but I helped to write one of the characters and then convince them to use my wife's picture as the image for the character. So if you play that game and you see the Red Queen, I helped write her entire story arc. And as weird as it may be, her picture is my wife.
And things got weird.
But yeah, I guess that would fall under full disclosure. Although I played this game before the second one, and like we contacted them to ask if we could be a part of the beta program because I really liked the first game.
Yeah, full disclosure, of course.
Yeah.
Something else that the game industry doesn't, or the games media doesn't do all that well.
Yeah.
I'm really going to update that one chart that I have. Game reviews from the 90s, game reviews from 2000 on, and add to the 10 out of 10 friend of developer or matches my ideology.
Right. But so that's my games.
And I'm pretty sure that closes us out for the day, unless there's something else on the docket.
Nope, nothing else on the docket for this show.
Oh, my poor voice is just...
Yeah, I'm scratchy. I'm over my cold and everything, but it really did a number on my throat, and so my vocal strength is a lot less. But I'm getting back up there. Tea and water help.
Well, if your voice is still okay, what are you doing this week?
Well, what I'm doing this week is releasing more of my backlog onto YouTube. I'm considering just doing a big dump because I've got a lot of new content that I've been working on. And I've got all these old episodes of things that are just like sitting, waiting for their time to go. So I'm thinking that I'm going to do a couple of episodes, maybe a couple episodes a day until I get through my entire backlog. And that's not usually the most efficient way.
You don't want to dump too much too quickly, though, because that does overwhelm the subscription box.
Yeah, diminishing returns and all that. But I don't know. I'm going to work on putting content out a little bit faster just so that I can get through my backlog and get into my new stuff that I've been working on. So, more, got a couple of streams to catch up on, and then more Space Engineers for the week. I've been working on some Hearthstone content, though, and some Eve stuff. I put together my...
There's a shock.
Yeah, I put together my Eve video where I discussed the game for 20-some-odd minutes. What about you? What are you working on this week?
Well, where would we find you, though?
Yes.
I mean, the internet's a big place.
The internet is a big place. You can find me on YouTube at Gaming Psychologist. You can hit me up on Twitter at JMA4707 or 4707.
Or you could email your hate mail to vglpodcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And also feel free to leave me a comment on any of my YouTube videos, be they the podcast or anything else you watch. And if you like my stuff, I wouldn't mind a subscribe. What about you, Rich?
Okay, I guess it's time for my side of things.
It's time for your side of things.
Pretty much all my series are still ongoing. I'm doing a series on Darksiders, like I briefly mentioned earlier. I think I'm still like 4 or 5, probably like 6 or 7 now on the episode list. I set these things up all ahead of time, pretty much Sunday. So episode numbers kind of get away from me after a while.
Right.
Especially whenever I record a week or a week and a half's worth of content at one night and to process it all. Because YouTube videos do take a while. And I do 7 of them a week now with the podcast.
Right.
Woohoo. I'm also playing the Ubisoft semi-indie title, even though it's not really indie because it was published by Ubisoft, but it was one of their oddball little developers called Girl Home, which is the Ubisoftest game I've ever played, like I mentioned last week. It's essentially climbing up a giant beanstalk.
All it's missing is haystacks.
Yeah, and overly pretentious plots. What?
I mean, that's a very good point, and also humorous.
I'm only on episodes 3 and 4. I do know that much for that list. And it's going to be a fairly short game, I'm feeling. Probably only lasting a couple more weeks at most. So it's time to start looking for the next game to play.
Right. Which do you want to tease it out, or do you want to wait until we actually have an idea?
Tease it out since we have no idea. We are planning on doing a co-op thing on both our YouTube channels, or just mine. Are you actually going to put it out in a timely fashion?
I'd put it out in a timely-ish fashion.
Yeah, we're planning on doing a co-op thing. We haven't quite figured out the game yet.
Right, that's actually...
Partly because you can figure out how to get one game working, and the other one didn't quite fit.
Yeah, that's why we both played, what is it, Card
Hunters.
Card Hunters. Because we were testing that as a co-op game, but...
Yeah, ends up, wouldn't be a bad streaming game.
No, actually, yeah, we could do that for a Kerbalcast MP or something like that.
Yeah, we may have to join Kerbalcast in Video Game Logic for the stream thing.
Be all right.
Yeah, figure out some sort of combined name. Assuming Biff allows it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the one who does the streaming, so I'll call it whatever I want to, dang it.
Kerbal Logic.
I mean, I keep intending to permanently change the name to Friday Night Friend Zone instead of Kerbalcast MP. That way I can do a lot more general stuff with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something we're working on. No release dates
well,
yet or anything. We haven't even recorded an episode. We're still searching for a good game. Because we tested out a couple this weekend, and they just didn't work for various reasons.
Yeah, finding a co-op game, well, especially after the big one that everybody talks about would be things like Portal 2, which I've beaten in co-op, so that would take some of the fun out of it. Borderlands 2, which I've played 200 hours of, and I think I would end up just killing myself if I tried to play through it again.
Nah, you're just getting started.
Unless I had a really good reason to.
Just kidding. I'm a good reason for anything. Well,
I'll just, they'll find my body and in my blood on the wall would be, it's Jared's fault.
We've got several things we could do one-offs in too. That's why I was asking him about.
Yeah, that's another thing is that doing one-offs, but then I'm left with a hole in my schedule.
Yeah, Sam.
Because I typically do a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, and then a Wednesday, Saturday game. Speaking of the Wednesday, Saturday game, Binding of Isaac is my third slot. And once again, it's an episodic series, so you could jump in at any point. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. And sometimes it's even entertaining to watch.
Yeah, that is one benefit to me not doing running series. I can just kind of shove a single video in there wherever, and it's like, yeah, look at this cool video that we did.
Well, I still have open spots. The podcast still goes out Friday afternoons.
Right.
But you don't want to put out too much at once, like I was talking about.
Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of the podcast going out, a quick bit of housekeeping. We have now hit the 3-week mark, and I have not heard back from iTunes about whether or not our podcast was approved or denied. So I'm now going to start trying to contact customer support and see if they can help me. I'm not really expecting too much, but I'm going to try anyways.
Well, just sound overly pretentious and make it sound like you're using an overpriced piece of hardware.
Using some overpriced Apple software, and that I've got I do have a beard. I was going to say that I've got a beard and glasses. I actually do have a beard.
Get a turtleneck.
I hate turtlenecks. They're so itchy on my beard. But
I have an idea for an Apple product.
Okay.
A keyless keyboard.
It uses magic to determine what you want to type. No, it works. Trust us. We're Apple. Also, give us $800.
Wow, going for the cheap model, aren't you?
Yeah, well.
But that is all that's going on over at Gaming with Caffeine Rage. You can also find me on Twitter, which I'm about to change my Twitter handle, I guess is the proper term. Would handle be the proper term? Username? I'm basically dropping the underscores from it. And I'm going to be creating a new end card for my videos to make use of it because my Twitter handle also shows up there.
Yeah, I like Twitter handle the best.
But you can still I own the other version of Gaming with Caffeine, Gaming with CR. Gaming with Caffeine Rage is far too long for Twitter because, 144 characters.
Yeah, that's pretty much your entire 144 characters right there.
What, do you have a problem with my name?
Nah, your name's fine. I mean, you have more brand continuity than I do. Because I have 2 names that I go by, depending on which thing that I'm working on. And then my YouTube channel is Gaming Psychologist, which is different than everything else. So, but nah, it's fine.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get Caffeine Rage on Twitter because someone had it like 5 years ago.
Yeah, what a jerk.
And has never used it.
What a jerk. Taking your name.
About the only time that someone's taken Caffeine Rage, by the way.
Yeah, it's a pretty specific name. But I'm not going to forget this week. I'm going to steal your shtick. Our intro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod, and his work can be found at incomputech.com.
And our outro music as well, by the way.
Our intro and outro music.
And don't forget, our website is at Video Game Logic Podcast at blogspot.com. I forgot that last week, so I put don't forget, and hopefully you won't as well.
Yep, we're up to 18 subscribers right now on our RSS feed, so we're going up.
Moving on up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was very excited.
Another old TV reference.
I got that one. I'd love to have 30 by the next time we record. So,
it was such a tease this past week over on my YouTube channel. I got some sort of weird surge of subs for over the weekend, and then almost all of them immediately left. I have no idea what was going on with that. I was so excited because I nearly hit 100.
I got, I think, 2 subs, which has pushed me right up to the line at 50 on my YouTube channel. Is there any closing comments or anything else you'd like to say before we...
No, David Spade.
All right, then. Well, as always, as the outro music starts to roll, bye-bye now. Are you not going to say bye-bye?
Oh, I was letting you do it.
Aw.
All right, bye-bye.
But see, you have to say it, and then I go, but I always get the last word. Bye-bye.
Not when I edit the podcast on my YouTube channel.
Fair enough, I guess.
Oh, you were going to make me look so bad on this one.
Absolutely. I'm going to make you look racist. It's going to be great.